Hello, everyone, or no one. Doesn't really matter. I really want to go through some stuff. Instead of doing a pre-record, I'll do it as a live stream, and then I'll cut it down into a pre-record and upload it later. So it's not a problem if I am here by myself. I just want to go through these documents one more time. So I actually found another Toyota document to compare it with, so that'll be nice. Let me get this up on the screen. Hello, Brit, and hello, Hot Wheels, and Shazza. There we go. So essentially, we were given these documents back in, I think it was June or something. Sunflower, hello. Goldfish, good morning. I'm eating snacks, by the way, so you have to excuse the noise. So I found these documents. I downloaded them. These were put out, obviously, way back. But in the documents, we had the data from Reed's car. I wasn't very impressed with the report for that. I wasn't actually sure why, but now I do. Now I'm sort of a bit more sure why why that data isn't cool. Doesn't sit right in my head. Hello, Cat Lover, and Gettin, and Tracy, and Joseph. Where's my favourite in chat? Off we go again. Sunflower. Welcome to memberships. And Carla. Hello, Libra. Who else have I missed? American Dreamer. Hey, Carla. Moira and Dorothy. Happy New Year's to everyone. Sorry, talking with my mouth full. Old Lady Blakes, hello. Nikki. Yes, we are a day ahead. It is now 4:30 a.m. on the 1st of January here. So, Happy New Year, Glow. Thank you, Pearl. Appreciate you dropping a comment. Cooking dinner. Well, it's midday in Eastern Standard Time Zone. So where's dinner? UK or something? Oh, you're calling lunch dinner. I know we all have different ones, different names that we call our meal times. Hello, hold my hello. Pepper, good to see you, buddy. Renelle, Moon Goddess, Tammy, and Counter Suze. So, Tammy's in Buffalo. Thank you. Happy New Year's. Yes, I thought maybe UK. So it is dinner. Yeah, they're not near me at this point in time, so touch wood. They have come close to me in years gone past, so 5:30 p.m. in Scotland, 6 p.m. in UK. There you go. Scotty McGuinness. Over. Well, I'm glad you caught one. I don't usually do them this early, but I figured if I get it in early, I'm not going to be interrupting someone else's stream later on this evening. So thank you, Dawn. Much appreciated. UK still in 2024. All right. So essentially, I just wanted to go over some stuff and maybe a little bit of revision. So what happened in our stream yesterday, we weren't necessarily talking about the Karen Reid trial. We did talk about some of the things, but someone logged in and said, I don't know, some trash. There's more data. They've discovered more data, and Team Reid have leaked it, which I don't think is true. I mean, if Team Reid leaked anything, we would have it by now. So I'm pretty sure it's just a rumor. But just because the rumor mill doesn't seem to be able to do the maths, maybe we can do a revision on the maths and why there is no more data. One more revision for those up the back. Also, we also have some information about the key cycle. So we'll do a quick revision on the key cycle just to dispel some of those rumors, because those were going around and I'm not sure that they were ever dispelled. I'm sure I did mention it a few times, but might as well do it again for those up the back. And then some information about the airbags, and then we'll jump into the actual data and what I can see and not see in the data. So I try to be Jeffrey, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes the only time I can get certain guests is when someone else's stream is on, so it doesn't always work out that way, but we do try. So Claire is on at 2. So if it's midday there now, then we've got at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, I think. How does something go from ruined and unusable to new data? It doesn't. It's like saying you've got 6 inches of, timber that you're going to use, but somehow you're going to create something that needs a 2-foot piece of timber. You get what I'm saying? It's maths. It doesn't happen. It don't work. But we'll go into that. We will revisit that. But anyway, I just wanted to show you where I got the car data from, because I'm not sure that a lot of people actually knew that that was out there. So there's definitely something weird going on. Like, there's no way they're getting more data just given the size. It's not bigger than they thought it was. That's not how the maths works. But on top of that, the raw data that they did collect, which I couldn't read because it was in hexadecimal format, I'm going to show you that can't change either. It can't be more of it. It can't be less of it. There can only be the hexadecimal, which you can translate into human readable format. However, you need to have the right software to do that. They're saying they didn't have the software. Bosch is actually saying they did. So this is also that. Thank you, Shazza. I'm glad it's helping. Kind of helps me sort through it too, like explaining it to you guys. If I can break it down into a simpler explanation for laymen to understand it, then it kind of means I understand it like properly. So it's kind of a two-way thing. So yes, Joseph, I like my receipts. It doesn't always have to be related to a case, as you may have noticed. It may just be shutting people up. Anne-Marie, my OG, thanks for dropping in, girlfriend. Debbie Blair, hello. Cheryl with an S. Yeah, damn trolls, exactly. But trolls have got no wind in their sails if you got the receipts. which is pretty much the same as, looking into a case. Yeah, I do believe that the two FBI guys that actually did testify, the ARCA guys, one of them is actually experienced with this software. And the defense did say in pre-trial, well, our guy can do it. And Lally was going, no, it's broken, we can't get anything else. And defense was saying, well, our guy can. So, and Bev kept showing that out, saying, no, can't have your guy. Lally says no. So I'm basically looking at this, that the FBI or the ARCA guys knew what they were talking about. So I'm just going to try and dig into it and see what I think they could be looking at. Obviously, I don't have evidence that they have. I think Hank's not really going to change his story. Sorry, that was the wrong comment. Exactly, Scott. That's what they do. The Reed chip did something else. The only other chip that Hank identified was a CMOS chip, which doesn't have any extra data on it. It's just got the operating system on it. So, how the what is it called? I forgot what it's called. Why did that word jump out of my head? How the Lexus infotainment system works is literally has nothing to do with this case. They all work the same. On that note, so does the CDR software. It all works the same as well. You might have different versions of it depending on when you're using it. But anyway, that's a smart move, Debbie. Don't believe anything. Even their receipts are freaking cooked. Off topic, but no one's using dog bite impressions. It's not necessarily junk science. It's just not a statistically verified science. Which that will be happening, but no one's comparing dog bite impressions. So, I don't know why they keep saying that, but they do. To say that a dog bite is arch-shaped compared to a mouth bite, a human mouth, for example, well, that's not comparing an impression. Well, that's just saying that's just stating the obvious. Of course, a dog's mouth is arched. So people get off. Yeah, pretty sure that they like those little rumors, like all the stuff that they spread before the trial, which some of that we're going to go through tonight. This evening, this afternoon, the morning, whatever it is, wherever you are, we'll go through some of the stuff that they spread, the rumors they spread that didn't actually come up in trial and certainly are not supported in the evidence. So let's start now with, sorry for eating in your ears, I apologize. Let's start now with a quick refresher on what's my refresher on? Should have had that all organized, shouldn't I? Oh my god, I gotta go pages in. We'll do a quick refresher on Hank Brennan's data theory. So essentially, what we found about that to begin with, which I think is back here somewhere. Oh my god, where is it? I should have had all my links sorted out before we kicked off, right? So I downloaded the videos, but the audio doesn't work that well when you unless you're doing it through the browser. So just give me 1 sec to find them. Well, there we go. Here we are. Let's start with the short one on the LX570 specifications. Let's start with that one first. For those who don't know what the specs are on the shush up with the ads. Oh my god, I got long form ads right now. Oh. Yeah, don't take it out on the TV. Hey, what the duck? And yes, it's talking. Some people are actually taking notice. I think what kicked me off today actually was a post by Turtle Boy. So, all right, let's go and see if we're past the ads. Oh my god, really? All right. Share screen. So just a little recap on the Lexus info, so we're all on the same page. All right. Let's get about there. Currently researching the specs for the other modules that Burgess has said he wants to check, because let's face it, he's not exactly a genius. But along the ways, I found some other data that I found very interesting. As far as tech specs go, I was looking at 2020 models, just in case, maybe the car was purchased earlier in the year and it contains older technology. And if it doesn't, this is the very minimum that it can do. Obviously, later models with later technology can do more. Now, I have talked about this pedestrian detection system before, but let's presume that didn't work for some reason. Maybe it only works in the forward direction and not in the reverse direction, which I highly doubt. But let's also assume that even the automatic brake system failed as well. And then, on top of all of that, let's also assume that the Safety Connect system, which also collates automatic collision data back at the Lexus server, not on board in the car, where their data retention policy ranges from 7 years on location data to 15 years on driving data to 10 years on multimedia data, 15 years on vehicle health data, and 4 years on other remote data. And at the very minimum, that Karen has disconnected it all from those services, which are otherwise automatically connected. And let's just focus on the basic specs for a 2020 model LX570. From multiple sources, I was able to find out that the maximum torque for the LX570 is 403 pound-feet at 3,600 RPM. I was also able to find that it's got a single reverse gear with a ratio of 3.785. Now, given those specs, I decided let's ask AI to play with those numbers and tell us what it thinks about reversing at 25 miles per hour. According to Microsoft's Copilot, it says even with a reverse gear ratio of 3.785 and a maximum torque of 403 pound-feet at 3,600 RPM, the Toyota LX570 isn't designed to reverse at 25 miles per hour. The speed achievable in reverse is limited by the gear ratio and the vehicle's engineering to ensure safety and control. The reverse gear is tailored for low-speed maneuvers, and attempting to reverse at such high speed would likely be unsafe and cause mechanical issues. Whoops, muted. Some people don't actually care about this maths, but you guys know me. I'm a bit of a mathematician. I like to know that how those things are calculated to come up with these ideas. But what I do know about reversing an automatic with a single gear ratio is that it can strip the teeth. And I know this because I've done it in a Toyota, no less. I ended up having to have my gearbox replaced, essentially. So yeah, doo-doo happens. But and if it doesn't matter to you, don't watch. That's okay. No one's going to force you to watch. But we're just doing some revision here. Some revision on subjects that I've already covered, because I'm going to sort of revisit them a little bit more today. So, in other words, you're probably going to break it. Asking the same question of ChatGPT gives us the formula on how to determine if the Toyota LX570 can reverse at 25 miles per hour given those specifications. The conclusion it draws is that while it is technically capable of achieving 25 miles per hour, you'll probably break it. And just for good measure, I asked Notepad LM AI to generate a discussion based on exactly the same question. Here's how that discussion goes.
Ever gone down those internet rabbit holes? You know, like, I gotta get to the bottom of this weird car fact.
Oh, absolutely.
Damn it, mute again. I'll spare you from the AI explanation, but essentially you see the formula. And the formula checks out. And, you know, a gear, the size of your gear ratio, doesn't matter if you've got more horsepower and your gear ratio is still made out of the same material and still the same size, you're still not going to get anything except breaking it, essentially. But it goes on. They talk about, you know, how the gear ratio and the torque and all the stuff is basically used and why it's used in that calculation. But you can go and have a look at that video if you want to. I'm going to switch to a different video. Let me find the next video. So that's just a basic thing on what the specs are for the drivetrain. So the next video was probably this one's the best one. Let's do this one next.
This is how to get in shape.
This is an ad. We don't want to watch the ad. All right. I'm doing things right. Sorry if I'm chewing in your ears, guys. So let's go again. And the only way you're going to be able to wrap your head around it is if I tell it to you backwards.
No, now I'm get the issue feel it worse than you know it's your feet at the bed, the mirror.
Just kidding. I mean, I do have to tell it to you backwards, but not that style of backwards. Remember when Trooper Paul testified and he showed us this chart and this chart and we were all like, wait a minute, where's the time column? How do we know what time this actually happened? And then Trooper Paul came back with some likely story like he didn't need the time, he just needed the key cycle and something about kilometres. Well, guess what? There is actually a device on the Toyota Lexus that has a date column with the key cycle. And here it is right here. This is a Toyota Highlander. And the software that's being used here is called Toyota Techstream. Oh, damn it, mute again. Oh my god, Dreamfeed Media, Gracie's here. Excuse me for talking with my mouth full, but Gracie, exactly. 7 tyre rotations. How many of them were actually backwards and how many of them were forwards? Because a lot of people have the theory that they were reversing it onto the tow truck, onto the flatbed. So we don't know how many were backwards and how many were forwards, right? So Right, they think that's what us that's stupid, but we can at least do the math here. Right? So some of us actually do get how the math works. Some of us know how to work a formula. So just knowing a formula off the top of your head, that's not really, I mean, that if you know all the formulas off the top of your head, that is smart. But you don't need to know all the formulas off the top of your head. You just need to know how to solve a formula. Then you go find the formula, which I did in that last video. I went and found gear ratio to horsepower and torque and blah, blah, blah. Once you've got the formula, you put the figures in, and you got to know how to solve the formula. This is something they don't actually have the smarts to do. I've not seen any of them do it, but I tell you who does have the smarts. Gracie's one of them. A race car driver. There you go. Some of us do have the smarts, and we went to uni and we learnt binomial theorems and how to solve them. So, which is what these formulas are. So, 3 car lengths and 7 standard size tyre rotations. We know this because Dream Feed Gracie actually got her tape measure out and measured it. So if I had one, I'd have done it myself. I'm eating bacon crisps. Can you hear it? Sorry. Because it's morning, it's supposed to be breakfast, but I'm eating junk food. Because it was better than slopping in your ears and eating, like, you know, bacon and eggs on toast or whatever. It's 4.8 meters in length. Thank you, Lucas. Brilliant. Can't remember the exact size of the tires, but we know Gracie did measure it. Let me get Gracie's link in the chat for everyone to tag for later, to bookmark for later. Dream Feed Media. There we are. Go check her maths out, because this lady is incredible. She knows how to solve a formula, and I love her for that. So that's Gracie's link. Bookmark it for later if you haven't watched her videos. Well worth a watch. Someone just ate a baked potato. Oh my God, Cheryl. Indeed. So, yeah, I am absolutely not entirely sure. I don't know, Mark. On it, to be honest, I think Trooper Paul just thought he was real smart until he started getting AJ, the engineer, firing questions at him. Pro tip: engineers know how to solve formulas too. Well, to be fair, Scotty, at least they're bacon flavored, all right? Oh, good on you. Pens binge watch all of Gracie's videos. It's very easy to get obsessed with her brain, isn't it? So, what part of Australia am I in? Or are you talking about Gracie? I'm in northern New South Wales, almost on the Queensland border. Pretty sure it's the same size tyre, isn't it, Lucas? For the 570. 92.5 inches long. Wouldn't that be circumference? Because I'm pretty sure Gracie measured circumference. around the tire, but yeah. Yep, bacon, because it's brekkie, right? Oh my gosh, thank you, Dr. Russell is my hero, much appreciated, and happy new year to you too. Dr. Russell is my hero too, by the way. Dr. Russell's somebody else who can do math. I always appreciate a brain who can math. Struth leakers. I get my holiday. Why do they need to chip off anyway? Yeah, because they're just making crap up as they go along. Like, I'm going to show you this shortly, but they didn't need to do the chip off. They got the data. They're just making up stories now to break the car even more, so that people can't get the evidence that they need for future, like, appeals and stuff. So exactly, I didn't get the driveway measurements, but they do support the tow truck theory when you're looking at the video footage of the car being reversed, because she didn't pull the car all the way in the driveway. She only pulled it up as far as the snow, like, stopped her from moving. I think it was a dad driving, but so it wasn't all the way in the driveway. But the fact that you actually measured the tires and worked all that out, that was something I never thought of. So brilliant move. So not the tires. Hang on. I missed what you said. Did I misread what you said? Oh, right. The 47. Yeah, not the tire. I'm sorry. I did misread what you said. I apologize. Yeah, a 4-meter tire is pretty big. I apologize for that. The snow/ice, sorry, mouthful, was operating like a dyno machine. The tires were spinning, the RPMs were up, throttle engaged, no actual movement. But it also helps Gracie if he was looking at the correct key cycle. We might as well jump to that. Let's jump to that before I move on in this video. Let me just show you this. Let me show you. I think it's this one. See here? This was something that we were questioning when we were adding up this stuff about the key cycles. So was it an actual key you stick in the ignition and you turn the key? And here's our answer, because this is Karen's actual car in the evidence exhibits. It's actually a toggle button. So you press it once to turn the car on, then you press it again to turn the car off. And so all that other crap that Trooper Paul came up with, Trooper Dunning-Krieger, he was trying to confuse the issue between a turn key and a toggle switch like this. And also Grant Smith Ellis also tried to tell us that by toggling that switch on and off repeatedly, that it would reset the entire car system, and that's not true either. If you press that button on and off, it'll actually reset your fob, your key fob. So the external key, instead of actually having a turn type key, you've got a fob that you put on your key ring, and it's got a button on it to lock and unlock the car. That's what it does. If you press that button repeatedly, it resets your key fob. So if you lose your key fob, you can go buy another key fob, and then you can press that button repeatedly, and it will reset the new key fob to that car. essentially. It's how you program your key fob, pressing that button on and off. It actually does nothing else other than reprogram our key fob. So, Grant Smith Ellis, you're a dickhead. Sorry, but you are. Because you only needed to Google how to reset your key fob and all the functions of pressing that button repeatedly, and all you're going to come up with is resetting your key fob, reprogramming your key fob. So I just wanted to knock that one out straight away. And since we have done that, let me knock it off the list. So essentially, basically means that we're back to that key cycle being probably the one that was putting it on the back of the truck, and not the key cycle where Karen was actually driving it the night before. So I'm sure you've all been through that maths 100 times over. I can do it again towards the end if you want to, but that one kind of frustrates me. It frustrates me because it's not complex. It's just counting in sequence, okay? One does not come 5 key turns after 7. It's simple. I mean, it's the other way around, right? That's the only reason that annoys me. But anyway, we can go back to this video and just get into what is up with the VCH, with Trooper Dunning-Kruger's VCH data. You might be familiar with the word Techstream.
Toyota Techstream. The Techstream was the Techstream. The Techstream at that point. Techstream.
And which part of the Techstream were you purportedly showing us, Trooper Paul?
Do this until February 1st. On January 1st, we're starting a 4-week chair workout challenge for
vehicle control history in it.
Sorry, I missed that. Called what?
A vehicle control history.
Thank you.
Well, that's exactly what we're looking at right here. The vehicle control history. So where's the date column, Trooper Paul? None of the data that you showed us had a date. And don't come at me with that we didn't have access to that version of the software, because the version of the software that we're looking at right here is well over a year old now. And when were you using the software?
For this one, I believe it was February 2nd, 2023.
In fact, isn't it true, Trooper Paul, that Toyota has always had a date column since at least 2014? And isn't it true, Trooper Paul, that the only way you'd be missing a date column is if you didn't use the Techstream software? And isn't it true, Trooper Paul, that the only way you'd be missing a date column is if you use the OBD2 port, which connects to a completely different chip that does not store the timestamp? Let me introduce you to an actual Techstream engineer, Trooper Paul.
All right, well, David, thank you for joining us here. Really appreciate you taking the time to come and meet with us today and help talk about Toyota Techstream. And for our viewers that may not have even heard of Techstream or know very little about it.
Before we do that, this dude here on the right is an engineer, and he works for I think he works for insurance companies as a hired help to forensically examine the Techstream data or any vehicle data for insurance companies to see who was at fault for accidents. I'm pretty sure that's what he does.
Why don't you start off, what is Techstream?
Techstream is Toyota's software that they use to diagnose their cars in the dealerships, right? And so it's what they use to do all of their background work. And so it's for repair. It's a software that's designed for vehicle repair, so that they can look at codes, they can look at troubleshooting, they can look at all the systems on the vehicle through the DLC, the same DLC that we use.
Okay. And so this was developed primarily for the automotive service industry, right? The repair industry. That's what it was developed for. Is that the primary industry that uses Techstream?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Toyota's software. So the dealerships use the software, but they also allow you to purchase a license to use it, I mean, for aftermarket shops or whoever wants to, or us. But yeah, basically it's a software designed to help with vehicle repair.
Essentially, anyone can buy it. A mechanic can buy it, you can buy it, I can buy it. If you want the more expensive stuff that the forensic guys do, it's a little bit more expensive. It's more like in the thousands of dollars. But you can get cheaper ways of doing it. But generally, if you're looking at a court case, you would hire one of these guys for thousands of dollars, and he would bring his equipment and tech and his knowledge along to help you out with it. So instead of buying it yourself, essentially.
Okay. But there are systems that you can access using Techstream that are beneficial to what we do, traffic accident investigation and reconstruction. What systems are out there that Techstream can access that maybe otherwise you couldn't get to?
Well, the big one for us is vehicle control history, which is basically there's a lot of different information that is stored from various triggers that Toyota stores in the airbag control module. So that data is collected in the background and stored, but there's a wide variety of things that we're going to get into today as far as triggers and different things that can actually cause that data to be stored. So it's useful because you'll get things like throttle opening, vehicle speed, cruise control on or off, brake application, a lot of what we get in EDR plus a lot of additional information.
Let me repeat that for you. He said a lot of what we get from EDR plus a whole lot of other information. And EDR stands for Event Data Recorder. That's the whole other chip I referred to that is accessed through the OBD2 port. This will become significant later.
But you can get it not only the 5 seconds near the crash, but way prior to the crash, or even days and weeks prior to that. So one of the examples we'll look at today, it's a 2015 that I imaged on the 28th of October of 2022 that has events all the way back to 2014.
Interesting, right? He took a 2020 model vehicle, created an image of the data, and it dated back to 2014. Where's the timestamp, Trooper Paul? God damn it, muted again. So, yeah, just to make that more clear, all of the events he got dated back to 2014. So, I think he's going to show us that data. But what else was I going to say in between all of that? So we've got two modules now that have been mentioned. So one is actually behind the steering wheel in the Lexus. It is in most cars because it's the crash data. So in here, where you're behind where your airbags come from. So your crash data is in there. But then down here underneath the dashboard, way over here underneath the dashboard, there's also a area where you can connect into the OBD2 port. And that's what your mechanic would normally use. So it records a different sort of data set, whereas this is specifically crash data. This is like system status, I guess, that's down here on the OBD2 port. And then the third one that they're talking about is the infotainment system that runs this LCD screen. So just so you know all of that, those are the three different types of chips that they've got in that car. Now, the CMOS chip that I'm talking about, so when Brennan went, there's a third chip that we want to get the data off, and he gave us a chip model number and everything. So the number that came back, it was for this infotainment system, and it's actually the CMOS that runs this infotainment system. So it's like the software that runs it. It's called, in the computer world's called firmware. So it's not hardware, which is that physical stuff in the board, and it's not software, which is what I'm using right now to interact with you guys on the screen. It's actually firmware, so it tells the screen, the hardware and the software, what each thing is doing and sending signals back and forth. So it's actually the firmware is on the CMOS. Just cleared that all up. So that's the extra chip that he has found and wants to take the data from. He's not going to find anything on it. I think the only thing you might find is the last time that system was updated and how, whether it was through the cloud or through someone's phone connected to the cloud. And that's all he's going to get from the CMOS chip. And other than that, it's just the operating system. So, you know, just because I can find your Windows operating files doesn't mean I can prove you did anything with them. Is the bottom line. But that's what he's referring to. There's all 3 different chips.
Okay. What about video images? I've heard possibly, does Techstream video or images or pictures, anything like that? What are you aware of with Techstream's ability to access video images?
You actually can, in some very late model vehicles, get video images as well. That is documented in the Toyota Information System, which is basically their electronic database that tells you what's where in the car, and it tells you what cars record what. And so there are some images that can be downloaded as well using the Techstream software.
Only some very late model vehicles can capture images. Considering this was in 2023 and Karen's vehicle was 2021, it probably wasn't one of those vehicles. Which is a very different story to somebody deleted it. Let me just pull up Scott's last question, comment, because he's actually being very, very technically accurate here. Key cycle is confusing because her car is a push button start, and a key cycle in a car that uses keys is slightly different because it's got to go past the accessory position first before it starts, right? And then before it runs, basically, before the motor's running. And then push button start vehicles, as long as brake is applied, a push of the button starts the vehicle right away. But if brake is not applied and the button is pushed, it will go into accessory. Isn't that what accessory is? Same thing as what accessory is. It'll just power up everything else in the car, not the motor. I think that's what he's saying. I'm sure you'll clarify. That those are important to understand, because Trooper Paul was trying to confuse those issues on the stand. Propaganda from the propaganda operatives, crashing everyone's stream, trying to spread a rumor.
Oh, interesting. What about support or coverage? What models are supported using Techstream, or at least with the data that we're going to use or would be useful to us? How far back does the coverage go? And is it all Toyota vehicles?
The vehicle control history, which is specifically what I'm using the Techstream information, and what most people that do recon are using it for, is started with the Toyota RAV4 in 2013. In 2014, they added the Highlander. And then after that, they've been adding vehicles kind of ever since. There is a list of those which we'll put up on the screen, and you'll be able to see the current list of what we have that's covered. The bulk of the vehicles that Toyota makes are now covered.
Well, looky here. The LX570 has been supported by this software since 2015. And this particular version of the software supports all models from 2016. So where's the date, Trooper Paul? You might get a little tired of me doing that through this video, because I was so annoyed at Trooper Paul. I just finished recording that whole series, taking a piss out of Trooper Paul. for being so dumb. And then I was just adding to it. Every time I looked further into stuff, it was just adding to it. So the excuse that they gave was that the Burler software, they couldn't use the Burler software to read the Techstream data. But they could have used the Techstream software that Toyota issues with it. So they sat around on the belt waiting, because the Burler didn't support the 2021 model Lexus until I think it was like December 2023. So at the start of December 2023, Trooper Guarino was reaching out to Burler, asking them, when's this update coming? When's this update coming? And then 2 weeks before the update was released, he decided to do the chip off and destroy the system. He was told it's coming in 2 weeks. He destroyed he tried to destroy the system. Luckily, Trooper Paul didn't know what he was doing, and it ended up being Karen's team that did the chip off procedure, so nothing did get wrecked. But that's what he was trying to do, and it got thwarted because Trooper Paul didn't know how to do a chip off. He didn't even know how to make a chip off look like half legit while he was trying to screw it up. So, but what we're proving here is that the LX570 had been supported by the Techstream, the Toyota Techstream data from 2015, basically late 2015. All models from 2016 onwards.
But it's a matter of which model years started coverage when. So it was RAV4s, Highlanders, I believe Camrys were next, and then there's another variety. Now, pretty much the bulk of Toyota and Lexus vehicles as well are covered for new models, but you'd have to look at the list to see if the one you're specifically looking at has the ability or not.
All right, and with Bosch CDR, the EDR data coverage goes back to kind of early 2000 model years.
By Bosch, he's referring to this tool here and its associated software. It's world-renowned imaging technology for taking snapshots of the EDR, which again is a different chip to the vehicle control history. A different chip that is commonly known to not have a date stamp.
Well, it's not luck and it's not gambling. It's a skill set that anyone can learn who is.
You wouldn't expect to be able to get anything prior to when you couldn't get EDR crash data from the Bosch tool, anything prior to that as far as coverage goes. You're not aware of anything going that far back as far as Techstream coverage?
No, 2013 is as far back. I mean, granted, there may be stuff in the Techstream. I mean, you can get code, engine codes, things like that, if that sort of thing is useful for your particular case. But as far as the vehicle control history, which is, the triggered data that Toyota's collecting, 2013 RAV4 is the first vehicle that had that for Toyotas.
Okay, great. Using Techstream, we often get asked with all the EDR tools and whatnot, the report that you get, and that how is the Techstream data using Techstream software? How is the information saved? Do you get a report, or do you have to do screenshots? How do you save the information that you retrieve using this equipment?
Well, when you actually go in to do the image, the vehicle control history image, if you do it in the native, you're obviously going to pull it in the native the software in its native format. It's very user friendly at that point because you can go through, look at individual events. You can see a variety of information that way. So that's the way you'll have to collect it, is using the Techstream software. At least at this point, I haven't heard of anybody doing anything else or using anything else.
Well, that's weird because we have, namely Trooper Paul and Trooper Guarino.
Once you've collected it in that software, you can export it into a CSV file and look at it in Excel. The CSV file is a little bit more clunky just because it's just the raw data. But you can, if you want to do analysis or something like that, and that's what you're more comfortable with, that is a possibility, or if you need to pass the data along to somebody else. But you can definitely save it in its native format And you can actually come back and reopen that file in the Toyota software if you have.
Damn it, mute button again. So essentially, what he's saying is that when the actual file that's saved from the system, when you're using the Techstream data, it saves a specific file format that is uneditable. It's actually called worm file. So it's write once and read many. WORM. That's the style of file that it's saved in. It writes it once, but you can read that as many times as you want. If you want to change that file, update that file, you literally have to go back to the system and re-image the system. So there's no way to intercept this and edit the data when it's in that format. However, when you move it into a CSV format, if you copy that information, plonk it into CSV format or Excel, either way, by the time you've done that, it is now editable, but it won't match the data that you pulled off the chip. Nothing from the chip is going to match what you've changed in that spreadsheet. So in Trooper Dunning-Kruger's case, he cherry-picked what data he wanted to show us and removed all the rest of the data from that spreadsheet table that he showed us. So that's not actually showing us that this is genuine data. That's just showing us that he cherry-picked some data. And we don't know if what he cherry-picked is actually what's reflected in the data. I'm going to show you the data, how it's presented coming off the chip shortly, and go into some like technical details about that. But nonetheless, they cannot edit what's on the chip in the car. They can't even edit the chip now it's out of the car, now that's chipped off. They can't even edit the type of the data that's in the file that these systems will image from that, but they can edit all the other shit that they invented along the way. So just so you know that's basically what he's saying here.
A license for the software. And that's the way I would prefer to view it, just because, as I said, it's a lot more user-friendly the way they've got it set up. But you can certainly look at it either way.
Okay, and like questions we also get with EDR data, can the Techstream software, the using that, can you alter or manipulate or change what you call a native, the raw data? Can you make any changes to that using the software?
No.
Oh, so if you don't export it to CSV and then import it into Excel, and you just keep it in the software, then it's verifiable for court?
No, you can't. And the other thing to keep in mind is that data, we have no ability to erase that data from the airbag control module either. That data, once it's stored in there, the only way it goes away is if it's overwritten by a newer event. Depending on the format, they overwrite eventually, but it stores so many of each event type, and then it will eventually start overwriting the older ones. But so we have no ability to change that.
Unless you pulled it clean off the motherboard and damaged it, right?
Obviously, if you export it into a CSV, you could certainly edit that, but the actual raw data that you would get in the Techstream format, I haven't heard of or seen of any way to change that or to change what's in the airbag control module either.
And so does Techstream have access to...
Bloody hell with this mute button. It's at least 5 times now. With the... I forgot what I was going to say. The mute button. The mute button distracted me. Holy crap. It just fell out of my head. Hang on. Hang on. Let's just go back a bit and listen to what he was saying.
What's in the airbag control module either.
And so does Techstream have access to...
Damaged it, right? Okay.
Obviously, if you...
Damaged it, right, yeah. It's back in my head again. I need to go back to remind myself. The way you damage a chip is scuff your shoes while you're holding it on the carpet. That's it. It doesn't take anything. It's very easy. So if the chip's not grounded to something, So when the chip is attached to the body of the vehicle, or even in at the motherboard of your computer, it's grounded. And so scuffing your feet on the carpet's probably only going to travel through the chip through the grounding pin, basically, and ground it, so it won't damage the chip. But you take it completely off the board and it's not grounded, and now you're scuffing your feet on the carpet, that will probably flip the binary. So binaries, ones and zeros, as you know. Is there a signal? 1 says yes, 0 says no. So if you scuffed your feet on the carpet, you could flip the ones and zeros. And I want you to remember that, because you're going to see some interesting data from Karen's car in a minute that kind of indicates maybe they tried to do something like this. Not sure, but it could indicate that's what they maybe tried to do.
You export it into a CSV, you could certainly edit that, but the actual raw data that you would get in the Techstream format, I haven't heard of or seen of any way to change that, or to change what's in the airbag control module either.
And so does Techstream have access to the event data recorder, the crash data that you get with the Bosch tool? Basically, could you create a comparable report using Techstream to the CDR report with crash data?
The short answer is no. You can't actually get the data that's recorded by the EDR or the traditional data that we get with the Bosch tool or with the Bosch software. Techstream does not collect that.
Just to be clear, the EDR module is the old way of doing it, and the vehicle control history is the new way of doing it. And because we're in this transition stage as far as the laws go, the federal laws that apply to the vehicle manufacturer industry, both chips need to be on board until such time as everybody has moved over to the new system.
Job done. Perfect. So we have a beautiful 31,000.
Now, I would assume that you can get the data through the DLC or the OBD port. Is the connection relatively the same? And are the principles the same as doing a Bosch CDR download? The car has to be powered up. The electrical system has to be intact to do a DLC download using Techstream. Is that all pretty much the same?
It's all the same. Yeah, you have to be able to turn the key on, power the car up, so the ignition runs, so that the bus, the CAN bus will actually be active, because that's how the system communicates.
See, this is one of the reasons they might do a chip off, so that they could actually completely disable the car and nothing would run, and then you couldn't get it through either of the ports. That might be one of the reasons that they would do that. So if you just can't turn the car on.
But yes, it's similar to if you could do a DLC download for EDR, you can do a DLC image of the Techstream as well.
Okay, so once you've selected your interface and you're in the software, and that, how do you get the data that you're looking for with the Techstream software?
Actually, once you get connected to the car, so you'll plug in, turn the key on, just like you would for an EDR download. The software will connect through, if you have the right interface selected, will connect to the car. It'll populate the VIN. There'll be a few other things that you'll have to choose from, just pull down menus, like if it's got a smart key, maybe some trim codes or whatever like that. But all of that should be relatively simple. Once you do that, it will pull up a screen that shows all of the modules that the vehicle might have in yellow.
So notice here, he could have used this software and shared that with the jury on the screen. He could have done that, and then they could have had screenshots of, these particular things that they entered into evidence. He could have done that, and that would have proven to us that he was actually getting this from the Techstream software, or the other way it's laid out would prove that it's coming from the Bosch software, which we'll get into in a little bit. This is specifically the Techstream for Toyota, basically. The one that would have read all of the data that they were bitching they couldn't read. that's what this one is showing us. But we'll get into the Bosch software in a second.
And because it doesn't try to establish communication with them until you tell it to. Once you've done that, you'll click on the SRS, the Supplemental Restraint System module. You click on that module. That'll open up another screen, and first thing it'll do is it'll give you if there's codes, right? So it'll flash up all the codes that are for the airbag system. And then on the left side of the screen,
I actually misspoke there. They couldn't actually do this in front of the jury because it has to be plugged into the car. I misspoke there. But he could have done the screenshots, like, to show that it's coming from that specific stream when they were doing the connecting, is what I was trying to say.
There'll be a radio button that says utility. And so you'll click on that utility button, and that will open up another screen. And in that screen, you'll actually see a list of multiple things that you can choose on the right-hand side of the screen. One of those will be vehicle control history. So you'll click on that, and you'll go down to the bottom of the screen, and there's an arrow. Click on the arrow. It's on the right-hand side of the bottom of the screen. Click on that arrow, and then it will say, it'll go to the next screen, and then basically what it'll do is it'll calculate how long it's going to take for you to download that control history. It'll give.
Let me just address Most Wanted. He didn't say it doesn't have a backup camera. He said the events that trigger the backup camera taking images of the event is only in later models. I can't remember what he said was a later model, but the 2021 was an older model. This was in 2023 when he was talking about it. So the 2021 model, which is Karen's car, is an older model. It does have the backup camera, but this extra feature that triggers the camera to take images of that triggered event from the rear of the car, that's only in later models, is what he was saying.
Give you some amount of time for that to happen. And then once you get it started, it'll just go, and it'll collect that data. The last one I did was about 10 minutes. I've had them as long as 20. Typically, it doesn't take as long as it says it's going to take, but it can. And, I think the longest I've waited is about 16 or 17 minutes for it to download everything. Once it does that, it will just pop up the screen that's got all the events stored there and show you a list of all those events. And then you can look at the events individually in the software. You should absolutely save it as soon as you do that. So there's a save button up on the top.
What's that? It's a date and time column. Dun, dun, dun. That was the whole point of me recording this whole video and this guy blabbing on for so long, to show you that the Techstream, the Toyota Techstream, literally has a date and time column. And he was saying in that previous segment where he was saying he downloaded data and got recordings right back to 2014. That's how we knew, because it's got a date and time column. So obviously it's been recording date and time columns. This software has been, the units in the car have been recording the date and time column for all this time. Yet somehow Trooper Paul's date and time column is non-existent. Okay, he has the key cycles. This column, you can see he's got key cycles, but he's not showing us a date and time column. And I think he's even got the odometer. We see the key cycles in his. We see the odometer. Pretty sure the time lapsed is in his, but not the date and time column. So you don't know what the lapsed time is between without that column, because that column is related to that column. But yeah, he's got this in it. He's obviously dropped that column there as well, and he's kept the triggers. So, I mean, this very clearly shows you what he's done when he's cherry-picked the data and put it into an Excel spreadsheet table.
Top of the screen, go to that save button, click on it so it saves it immediately. It will give you the option when you click on it to save it in its native format, which is a TSE file.
So if the file extension doesn't read .tse, then it's not a verifiable native file.
Or you can export it in a CSV file. Typically, I'll do both right away and put it in a place where you can find it, because
So just to clarify this, TSE is the Toyota Techstream file format. But what they actually used was they ended up using the Bosch and its CDRX file format. But it's the same thing. If it's not saved in its native format for that software, if it's CSV or it's Excel or any other not in its native format, then it's not verifiably connected to that system. So obviously it can be changed and manipulated.
the software kind of buries it in one of its own directories. So save both of those things in that format, in both formats. And then if you want to, like I said, you can view it.
Okay, that's something that Abby showed us also, how the software buries the native files and the native file formats in their own directory structure. Abby showed us that with the camera equipment. It does the same thing. It saves its native file format in its own folder structure. And so it's hard to find, what you're looking for. But she spent quite some time actually showing us where to find that stuff in that particular software. But this does pretty much the same thing.
In the Toyota software, you can view it in an Excel, however you want to do that. And then when you go to close out of there, it will actually ask you if you want to save it again. And I always just save it in the native directory. So now I've got 2 copies, both of the one that I first initially saved and then the one that saves automatically when you close out. And you can go back in, even after you're disconnected from the car, with the Toyota software and reopen that file and view it in the Toyota software anytime as long as you've saved it.
So if you create a CSV copy and you want to put that in Excel, you would verify it by having the original .tse file with your Excel file. And then you would hand both of those files over to Defence in a timely manner during discovery so they can check it before it gets entered into evidence. You see how this works now, Trooper Paul?
Realestate.com.au just listed their top 10 performing suburbs of 2023. Investors were shocked.
Okay, so what?
So again, that's what Abby showed us with the camera software. She showed us that if you've got the original camera recording from, whatever it was surveilling at the time, and you have it actually in the software with its native file format, then you can export it out into other video formats to share with, the jury or whatever. But it's got to be in the native software to begin with in order for it to be verified that it came from that original recording. And he's saying exactly the same thing about the Techstream data. It's got to be connected to the car and connected to that Techstream or that Techstream file to be in the same directory, or else you cannot make an export from it. So, Brian B, because an actual Toyota dealership, so first of all, the prosecution wouldn't do it because an actual Toyota dealership would have done it the right way, and they knew that. But the defense couldn't do it because they'd already stripped all the chips out of the car. Judge Bev said, yes, you can strip all the chips out of the car. Just to revisit what we just previously said, the motion was put to Bev, we want to strip the chips out because we've got all reasons we don't want to use the Techstream data without saying we don't want to use the Techstream data. Then the defense said, no, our ARCA guys can read that. Our ARCA guys can do it. And Bev said, no, strip the chips. So, they didn't really get a choice. But there's also another area that you're not looking at with this Toyota dealership shit is Toyota itself is not going to involve itself in this type of case, because this type of case, the prosecution actually claiming a system-wide failure. which is not a good look for Toyota. And can cause a whole heap of other issues for Toyota that they specifically would not want to deal with. So Toyota themselves are never going to get involved in this kind of case. So about the only way they could is maybe if they proved that there was no system-wide failure. Not sure that there is something for them to do that, but that's the only way I could see them actually ever getting involved, as Toyota itself getting involved. So let me just read through. Hey, Dave's channel. Happy New Year's to you too. Candy Cane. Happy New Year's. Brian B. Thanks for joining us. Anyway, so I've forgotten to mention.
What causes the data to be saved into the system in the vehicle?
Well, basically, Toyota's got a variety of what they call triggers that will trigger an event to be stored. And so it's very similar to EDR in the respect that it will give you information prior to the trigger and after the trigger, right? So it's continuously recording. When the trigger occurs, it snapshots what happened before, and it gives you some time after. There's various things. There's an example on the screen of what the triggers look like, so what it's seeing, what the sampling cycles are, things like that. And then the next example that you'll see on the screen is a list of some of the triggers and the amount of data that's recorded before and after, and then also how many points of data are recorded, because it changes the frequency of the recording depending on the event. So not every single one is the same. So one of the triggers, for instance, is accelerator high position in mid to high speed, right? So basically you're traveling along 40 to 50 miles an hour and you dynamite the gas or dynamite the accelerator, and that potentially will store an event. Traction control, vehicle slip control, ABS, sudden braking, all these things are things that will trigger an event. But the important thing to remember is that just because it's called a trigger, it's very specific what the trigger is. And it's not the same trigger that EDR refers to as algorithm enable, right? It's a separate system, and it's actually recording it based on that trigger. So just because you have data that corresponds to your event, the trigger is not going to be the event trigger that triggered that stored the EDR data.
So just to give you what the simplified version of what he just said, the sensors all over the car. So some sensors are measuring, for example, like impact. So your bull bar, your bumper bar has a impact sensor that sets off your airbag, right? But there's also other sensors in the car. So when you're talking about the crash data, it's those kind of sensors. It's impact sensors. So it's looking for an impact from the side of the car or the front of the car. Where are the other ones? So you got passenger. There's like some of them have actually passenger sensors on the passenger side. Then others have rear passenger sensors, and then you've got your front sensors. There's actually another one on a lot of cars, which is where your windscreen wipers are. So if you hit a pedestrian and they come up over your bonnet, they will that will trigger the airbags there for the pedestrian. So there's a whole bunch of different triggers. So those are impact sensors. But then you got a bunch of other sensors going on. So you have your like mechanic port, which I was explaining before. So that might be what throttle, what position your throttle was in, or how hard you press it, or whether or not the fuel's getting through. Most EFI fuel injected sort of vehicles will record the injection rate, things like that. So now you've got your mechanical triggers. So you might have an accident which will trigger several triggers, which will be your impact triggers and maybe some of your mechanical triggers. So they may not match up exactly by an exact time, depending on that sensor or that thing that's measuring that particular thing. So that's what he's trying to explain there. So the entire car is not like linked up to one trigger, and everything will record at once on that one trigger. So that's kind of what he's saying. It takes a little bit of wrapping your head around the triggers, what all the different triggers are, what they're actually measuring, what their purpose is probably another good point. To be able to say this trigger can't happen around the same time as this event, and so on. So in plain English, he's saying that the older module stores different trigger types to what the newer module does, inferring that the newer module is far more specific to the make and model of the car and its individual features. Whereas the older module wasn't so specific. It fitted thousands of cars with only similar features.
It could be close, it could be nowhere near it. But you have to keep that in mind when you're trying to use this data for analysis, that it's going to be a completely different time that it was triggered. And so you can't look at this and say, well, the trigger means that it matches the EDR, because it may or may not.
So there's all kinds of things that are going on in the vehicle that can trigger these systems to record data. What type of information is recorded other than the typical standard EDR crash data?
Well, again, you'll see up on the screen, there's a variety of things that it records. The things that we're most interested in are things like throttle position, vehicle speed, brake pressure. You'll actually get lateral and longitudinal Gs from those accelerometers.
Wait a minute, there's an accelerometer in our cars, just like there's an accelerometer in our phones, and it's forensically reliable data? That's not what Trooper Garino said.
You can get whether the cruise is off or on. You could get steering, what actually caused the trigger, right? So you'll know if it was an ABS or what it was. You'll get brake pressure, which will tell you how far the person is into the brake. So there's a lot of really good information that gets stored. It's just a matter of what stores it. And then also in the image on the screen, you can see that each trigger is given an ID number, so those ID numbers are laid out.
Typically, you would use the ID number for whichever triggering event you are interested in to search through other data modules, like, I don't know, maybe the infotainment system, and match the ID with a row which might have, I don't know, like GPS data. But gee, what would I know? I only program databases for a living.
As far as vehicle speed,
Oops,
which triggers will give you speed, because not every trigger will give you the same information. But a lot of times, for instance, in a crash situation, a lot of times the trigger that I'm interested in will be a sudden braking, or a vehicle slip control, or a collision avoidance system that activates. And when that system activated, you'll actually see information, so it should store this information. And you know if that system activated, it's doing collision avoidance. And again, to reiterate, that trigger that triggered the collision avoidance could be happen at a different point in time than algorithm enable.
Oh, so timestamps are pretty important data points then. Did you hear that, Trooper Paul?
And it most likely did, because the avoidance hopefully is before the crash. But there's good information that it can tell you about what was going on prior to the crash, even prior to the 5 seconds before that we get from EDR.
All right, so you mentioned all these different triggers that trigger all this different information being collected that may or may not be related to the event as stored in the event data recorder. How are you able to differentiate when that trigger occurred in a relationship to an event?
The highest art is beautiful.
I know you all want me to not support...
There's a few different ways. If the vehicle's equipped with a
I know you all want me to not to support my own channel with the ads, but sorry, I'm supporting my own channel with the ads. But I don't mind supporting other creators' channels with their ads either, especially if I'm using their content to make my show.
navigation system, you will have a time and date stamp for when the particular trigger occurred. So if you know the time and date of your crash, that makes it relatively simple. If you do not have a navigation system, unfortunately, you will not have that time and date stamp.
Huh. So if the EDR, which doesn't have a timestamp, doesn't match the vehicle control history, which does have a timestamp, then you can always refer to the ID number in the infotainment system that matches the EDR event to compare if they are the same event or not. Unless, of course, you accidentally on purposely lose the date column or accidentally on purposely destroy the infotainment system, for example.
And the other important thing is that you may have ignition cycles, but these vehicles have more than one cycle counter. And so the cycle counts in your data may not match the cycle counts in your EDR data. And that doesn't mean that it's not related. It just means that there's two different cycle counters.
One key cycle counter based on the old technology and the other key cycle counter based on the new technology.
So what you would need to do at that point is you need to look at things like the vehicle speed and look at what type of event. And if you know,
using the ID that we were just talking about,
the person, for instance, hit the brakes right before the crash or swerved, then you can potentially relate that. The other thing is if the vehicle's totaled, you'll know that what's going to be one of the last events. If there's an event that's related, it's going to be one of the last events that's stored. Also, many times you could get mileage. And so if you have mileage on the vehicle, you also may be able to correlate that.
He did say also multiple times there, meaning all of these other data points he's mentioned. Also, the mileage could help. Also, other data, which is vastly different to what Trooper Paul said. He basically said, no, I only needed the mileage, that's all. No need for timestamps or matching IDs in other modules.
To your crash. So there's multiple things that you potentially could do. The big thing is that the data should match the circumstances of the crash, right? I mean, that's what we ultimately, this is just another tool. And if you can coordinate this from speeds or from something to say it's related to your crash, then definitely use it. If you absolutely can't tell for sure because you just don't have the information, then I would say it's possible that it's related, but it may or may not be. So it's just a matter of, that's where the analyst part of this comes in, right? You have to use this as an analysis tool and see if you can correlate this somehow to the circumstances of your crash.
So, Trooper Paul, where is the cotton pickin' tar nation bloomin' timestamp, mate? Mate? Where is it? Alright, that was the point of that video. Just to show you all that there should be a timestamp. So I'm going to pull up the actual exhibits with the car data in it. Let me just see if there's anything else that I've already published previously to brush up on. There is this one video which I kind of just brushed on already. We don't necessarily need a 20-minute video on it. And that's just basically where everything that the Commonwealth claimed in Trial 1 about the tech system basically implicates Toyota. It doesn't implicate Karen. It implicates Toyota. There's nothing in there that they have said which directly connects to Karen's operation of the vehicle. But everything that they have said is like a complete system-wide failure of the entire, all three of these units that we've been talking about, these data recording units, complete system-wide failure. That implicates Toyota. So, yeah, there's that. But anyway, let's get on to some other information. So we can stop doing that. Whoops, wrong button. We can stop doing that for a second and go and get some more info. Next thing I wanted to cover, just some extra information that pretty much confirms, what is that, answering that one there, pretty much confirms, like, it's not just him saying this, There's actually a lot of different companies who deal in forensic engineering that are saying the same thing. Can the module or the reports be altered? No, they can't. This one's referring specifically to the Bosch, and the reason I looked up Bosch info is because that dude was just talking about the Techstream directly from Toyota, whereas we hear from Trooper Guarino, I think it was, said that he didn't actually say what they used, but the report ends up being in this format, and it does have a Bosch logo at the top. I'll show you all that in a minute. Essentially, what this is saying is that no, you can't edit it. You cannot edit the data, but what you can do is export it to a CSV file or an Excel file, and you can edit that data. But it will no longer match the original data that you pulled. So exactly what the dark. Not only was a system-wide failure from Toyota, but it also impacted the cameras, all the cameras in Canton. So maybe they're also Toyota. So yes, it wasn't. Well, there's two things that were entered into evidence. Okay, the one that we saw on the screen was Excel, but we did actually get the download, this CDRX download from the Bosch equipment. So I'm going to show that to you. It wasn't shown to the jury, so we didn't see it put up on the screen. It was just if you go right back to the start, I showed you where I got these exhibits from. So not all the exhibits were put on the screen. Some exhibits were simply just given to the jury and not put on the screen. So what I don't get, if the big guys sent the expert saying the SUV didn't hit John and John didn't hit the SUV, if they're sure saying that, then they must know for sure themselves that she didn't hit him. Well, it's not just because of the science, because John doesn't have any markings on his body that match up with parts of the Toyota of the Lexus, but the Lexus doesn't have any markings on it that match up with parts of John's body, is what they were saying there. But they've also seen this Techstream data, is what I'm saying. So there's more evidence in the Techstream data, which is more conclusive than them just saying there's no injuries that match the body or the body matching the car. The Techstream data is like even more solid evidence than that. Teresa, would I do that? I think I am. I think I'm actually proving that they did here. I don't know if this is like a court level proving that that's what happened, but is it a jury level proving of it? Probably. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a tech person. But if I was trying to explain this to a client, for example, this is the way I'd be trying to explain it so that they understood. But anyway, if the client's trying to tell me that no, that data can't be edited, but these PDFs or the Excels or whatever can, then I'd be looking up the information and going, oh, look, my client is actually right. These can't actually be edited. Now, as he was saying in the Techstream data, if you wanted to export a PDF of that CDRX file in TSC for the Techstream file, you literally have to have that file in the same folder when you're trying to do the export to prove that that's the data that you're pulling it from. So it's the same with the Sallyport camera software that Abby was showing us. Exactly the same. You need to have the original native file there to be able to do any export. But once you've done that export, well, you can edit the export. It just ain't going to match the original native file anymore. So there's that. Now, the next thing I wanted to brush on is this point here. This is pretty commonly known, but apparently there's a lot of people out here who don't know it. So let's just hit that one. If you are going forwards in the car and you hit something at the front end of your car. The car stops, but your body keeps moving forward. So the airbag is to prevent that forward movement of your body from hitting the dash or the steering wheel. But if you're going backwards and then you hit something going in reverse, then your body is still going backwards. What's cushioning your body then? It's the back headrest and the cushioning of your seat. So you don't need the airbag for a reverse collision. It's not necessary. You already got a headrest that catches your head and hopefully saves you from some whiplash. But that's why the airbags don't deploy in reverse collisions. It's not all reverse collisions, but in just standard straight on or hitting light objects, maybe reverse it into a pole, perhaps something like that. That might trigger because it's a lot harder object, but generally just an animal or a person or a soft object, it won't trigger the airbag. You might run over, your kid's bike when you're reversing out the driveway. That won't trigger an airbag event. And that's because in going in reverse, the direction that your body is traveling when you hit something is backwards, away from the steering wheel. So you don't setting off the airbag is first of all a waste of money because you've got to actually go and get it reset again, right? Costs a lot of money to get them reset. So there's a reason that they don't trigger in events where you don't need them, essentially. But there are other events where you don't need them. That's not the only event, but I just wanted to make it clear that a reverse collision would not set off the airbags. So Trooper Paul going to the airbag system looking for events and saying there were no events there kind of makes sense that there were no events there because it wouldn't have triggered an event because you were going in reverse. If you hit a pole or we're going, I don't know. I kind of think that if it were the velocity that he says she was traveling, there would have been a triggered event. So under a certain speed and under a certain amount of impact isn't going to trigger it, but the speed he's saying and the amount of impact he's suggesting should have triggered it. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. So I'm just reading Gitmo's comment there. Anyone else with sophisticated skill enough to plan this investigation, the fact that they still did provide someone in the background way more skilled is assisting. Yeah, absolutely. Trooper Guarino. That's my guess. So, yes, they all come standard with the backup sensors. But as we were saying previously with the backup sensors, her model was just a little prior to the models where it would trigger the camera to take snapshots of what's going on with that event. So she does have the backup sensors, which essentially will cut the engine if there's something behind the car. But the extra feature of taking a snapshot of what's behind the car is a little bit more a later model. So, but I didn't establish exactly how much later a model. I did establish it doesn't have it, but I don't know when it came about for Lexus, but I wasn't able to establish that part. So, I'm glad someone enjoys learning about it. Some people just glaze over when you're talking about tech. They're just like, nope, cannot do it. So I actually watched a number of lawyers glazing over when the tech came up. So that was interesting. They're very smart at their jobs, but, not everybody has an interest in math. Like my friend Gracie and I. All right. So other times when the airbags may not deploy based on, algorithms. So what I found out in researching all of this is that America has like these standards, and these certain standards have to always be met for that particular safety system, be it the airbags or the recording of the events. They have to meet those standards, or the car doesn't meet being allowed to be sold by that company, if that makes sense. So were you confused? I'm confused. Is her car designed like that? If you back up and it beeps, it shuts the car down before hitting. Yes, her car is designed like that. But there's one feature that her car doesn't have, and that's the snapshot of what's going on behind the car when those events are triggered. So, but yes, her car does have it, which is why I'm saying it's a Commonwealth is claiming a system-wide failure, because that infotainment system that takes that trigger, that takes that picture from the trigger, it's a separate chip system to the chip behind the dash, behind the airbag chip, which is a different system again to the chip that the mechanic plugs into. These are all separate systems. So for any of those other systems to not trigger that reverse hitting something in reverse event, the whole lot had to be down, basically. Oh my God, Libra, that's a freaking awesome job. MIT. Pity he's not your current husband and we can start drilling him with some more questions, because I am an engineer, but I'm a software engineer. So I am not an engineer in the sense of actual building things and the physics of things. I'm definitely pretty good with building software, but so completely different fields, essentially. They had to, at the very least, they had to have edited. We're going to go into that next. So let's pull up some of that information. But before we get there, what other scenarios where the algorithm is told not to trigger an airbag event, an airbag deployment? They are highly complex, I'm sure they are. However, based on my investigation and experience, we are talking about another forensic technician here. I have listed down some crash scenarios where the airbag may not deploy. So the lighter the collided object, the lower the chance of an airbag deployment. So, for example, an impact with a pedestrian is less likely than an impact with a tree or a pole. Because one's like a sudden stop and thud, whereas the pedestrian collision is not a sudden stop. So that may not trigger. Although there are some, like I said, some vehicles have that extra airbags at the front where the wipers are. That should make one unless there's a problem with the system. So airbags rarely deploy in pure rollover crashes. This is because a rollover does not create the required deceleration. However, considering the unpredictability of rollover accidents, airbag deployment is observed in some rare cases. But a frontal or side airbag will not help much in a rollover. Wearing a seatbelt is the best way to protect yourself from injuries in a rollover. Airbag deployment is not guaranteed in crashes with multiple small objects. In such crashes, the ACU, I forget what ACU stands for now, Airbag Control Unit, measures the severity and direction of each collision. The airbag will only be deployed if one of the collisions is severe enough to cross the threshold value, whatever is set, pre-programmed into that ACU. So you may have a crash where your car impacts multiple breakaway poles, but the airbags did not deploy. So that might be those bendy poles on the side of the road that are designed for you to run over them. So you might hit multiple of those and it might not deploy your airbags, because those bendy poles aren't going to destroy your car. It's not a life or death situation. They're going to stop your car suddenly and make your head hit anything. So that's that example. Where are we? Up to date and functioning now. And now it's total trash, right, after they got their hands on it. I think it was up to date and functional. I'm going to go into that a little bit more shortly. My backup camera gets covered by snow and grime when it snows or rains. Does that stop it from working? That's an interesting question. Does it actually stop it from working or recording or showing you that you are reversing? Or does it just show you snow? Does it still continue to function, but all you can see is snow and grime? Hey, thank you, Brian B. I'm pretty sure it was the airbag control unit, which is the same unit that we are talking about, which is your EDR. So it's actually stored behind with your ACU, behind the steering wheel. All right, so what was the last one? An airbag may not deploy in under-road crashes in which the car goes under a truck. Airbag deployment depends on the structure of the truck, the presence of under-road protection bars, the speed of the car. Airbags will not deploy if the car is hit from behind. An airbag deployment is not guaranteed an impact with animals or if an object falls on the vehicle. Now, the reasons that they give for all of this is because airbags can actually be more dangerous than the little scuffle that you're in. So airbags can actually kill people. So you need to be in a life or death situation for them to deploy. And the other reason is it's very expensive to get your airbags repacked. I'm not sure what they call that, but yeah, this is a very expensive procedure. Okay, so we can have a look now just at the rest of the exhibits of Karen's car. What picture's not good? Oh, no, oh, yeah, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so in mine shows the camera, but you can't see. Right, the picture's not good. So when there's snow and grime on it, it still works, but the picture's not great. Right. That could be the case, Natasha. But I am pretty sure American standards would have, so I've been looking through all the standards, and they do actually take this into account, that the sensors need to be able to handle certain temperatures and freezing over and all that sort of stuff. The specific sensors for accident and safety, they have to be able to pass those tests. So, all right, what else have we got here? Okay, let's start from the top just so you can see. This is what Trooper Paul showed us with, the incident. And you can quite clearly see here, turn your head to the side, there is no date and time column. Where is it, Trooper Paul? And even if this is pulled from a separate table, it should actually relate, like I said, through an ID, table ID, to the date and time in this same VCH. So the fact that he's got VCH here as part of this table tells me that these actually did come from the Toyota Techstream, and he did say Techstream multiple times. So I'm pretty sure that that's what he's saying. This all came from in the Techstream. So again, there's no dates, no times, no ID number to say that this matches which data in the Techstream. None of that there. Here's the VCH time. So this is the time elapsed, but not the date column. We still don't know when this date actually was. So this stuff here is exactly what we were looking at when I said to you, see the date, see the time and date column, everybody? This is the exact table we were looking at. Where's the time and date, Trooper Paul? So this here is where everything, all those units are stored. So the ACU, the EDR, they're all stored in behind all of this. Obviously the infotainment system, the start and stop button, it's not a turn key. What have they done here? They have pulled the console. I don't know which way that goes. They've pulled the console out to, I don't know what that plug there is, probably to the gear lever maybe? I'm not sure. It's electrical. I don't know what that is. Okay, someone in the chat who's techie, who's like car oriented. What the hell are we looking at? We don't snow often in the city, but can get cold and wet. I drive a Toyota Odyssey. Maybe the sensors work internally, but I get continuous alert if the sensors are not working, and they continue to alert you until the snow or dirt, etc., is off the sensors. That could be an issue. You might need to take your car to Toyota. I don't think that's supposed to happen. Snow can. Agreed. Yep. Click right. Oh, I don't know. Does that work? And that's upside down. Wait a minute. And that's the right way up. It says power. No, that's the right way up. Hang on. That's upside down. Yeah, no, it is the right way up. So he's pulled something out here that's still connected onto that piece. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's definitely in the console area. So perhaps the gears are actually electronic in this car. Like, I know mine are not. Mine are actually connected by a proper cable, so. I was saying for the charts to be... Oh, the charts. Duh. Okay, Brian. Sorry, I misread what you were saying. No date. No, the system didn't tell me. The system didn't tell me the date itself. Keeping it all secrets from you. Anyway, I'm not sure, but I know that's the center console. But I can't tell if we are at the back looking forward. See, I can see the cherry wood there. So I think we are at the back looking forward. So that would probably be the gear stick or the extra things, extra buttons and stuff. Look, power off. So that's this part. There's those 4 buttons. So it looks like they've pulled this here off. Maybe. There's the 4 buttons. Yeah, that's actually the ignition. They've pulled this off. That's the ignition. Isn't that interesting? Because that rumor that Grant Ellis Smith spread around. So before this actually got published for anyone to look at, he knew that they were looking at the ignition switch like this. So how did you know that, Grant? Did you somehow get leaked some information before anybody else did? So this is the dash. Yeah, see, that was the ignition. Why did they pull the ignition switch out? Is there a chip on it? Nope. It's weird. I don't know. It seems like they just wanted to dismantle the car for the fun of it. So they pulled all the dash out up here so that they could pull the infotainment system chips out. Let's just destroy her car. This here is the infotainment system by Pioneer. So there we go. Complete destruction. Marsha has a question. She doesn't have a driver's license. Did the Commonwealth? Yes, they did take her license. Correct. You're welcome, Dave. I hope it's educational. I just saw you said it is, so that's good. I'm glad it's helping. I know, especially electronic ignitions like this. Like, holy crapola. Her car's destroyed. There's no putting it back together. I don't think her car's ever going to go again. I'm pretty sure she's still paying it off too. I'm not sure where I heard that from. That might not be true, but I heard that she's still paying the loan. So, all right, so we can close all those windows now. We've been through all that info. Let's have a look at the actual data. The reason I was holding the data off is because it really isn't going to make any sense to you, but I can compare it so we can see what we're supposed to be seeing, which is about as far as we can go with that. But let me just pull up my notes and tick off what we covered. Bits and bytes. Oh, we forgot to do the bits and bytes one more for the people up the back. We did the airbags. Static data. We talked about the static data. Yep, can't be changed or altered. All right, so let's do the full Bosch reports now. That's all that's left. So we did do a basic kind of like revision on why the bits and bytes is wrong, and everyone running around saying, but there's more, are wrong. So the math tells us that there can't be more. So we can stop worrying about that. I think I have to do I think this one I'll have to do as a share screen. So we're going to get like a vortex effect here. Until I switch to the screen I want to share. There you go. You're all sucked into the vortex. All right. Now, because I can't see, hopefully what you're seeing is two Bosch reports. If I switch back to see what you guys are saying, I'm going to be back to the vortex. See? Can you guys see it? An immutable data. If you know, you know. Exactly. But that's in the programming cycle. Worm, if it's actually the storage device. But yes, if you know, you know. So tell me you can see two Bosch reports here. On the left is Karen's report, and then on the right here is another Toyota, another type of Toyota. I don't know that it's a Lexus, to be honest, but it is the Techstream for a Toyota. And there is some differences in the date. 2014 is when this was imaged, and then over here 2022. So that's the differences. This is old software, this is new software, essentially. So in the old software, it just seems weird that the old software would have way more data than the new software, right? Or even that the new software has different things laid out differently. That's not unusual. But the old software has way more data. I find that really unusual. I'm going to vortex everyone again so I can see what you're saying. Inception view. Okay, we see Stream Studio. No, only OBS. Yes. OBS, yes. Okay, I need a straight answer. Whilst I was talking about the two pages, you could see the two pages. This is real hard because you guys are like a minute or so behind what I'm actually saying. All right, how else do I do this? Okay, all right, hang on. It's sharing a window. Let's try that. Okie dokie. How about now? Can we see it now? I'm just going to leave it up for a bit. But obviously it's in the way and I can't see the chat. So I can't tell if you're answering me. But type of 1, if you can see 2 Bosch reports now, and I'll just have a swig of my coffee and roll a cigarette while I'm waiting. All right, now I'll switch over. Yes, now is good. Okay, awesome. I just had the wrong window share. All right, so over here on the left is Karen's vehicle data. Over here on the right is another, it's a 2014 report. So it's an older model and it's older software. But they're both using the Bosch crash data retrieval system. I'll show you a little video on what that actually is. But it's essentially, it's a set of cables with a specific type of plug on the end, and you plug it into the ACU port. So this one here, I don't know how they retrieved it, but over here, Trooper Paul actually wrote through the DLC port. So the guys that we were listening to just earlier said that there was different ways that you could access different parts through the DLC port. And then there's the OBD2 port. So he's actually done it through the more modern port, let's say. Whereas, because this is an older report, I'm going to hazard a guess this is the OBD2 port. So that might account for some of the differences as well. So first of all, we can see that the newer version of the software gives us some extra bits and pieces that this file information doesn't. But something else I would note here, see in the comments section, no airbags deployed, damage to the right rear, seatbelts, no sign of operating usage or non-usage, OEM type. These are things that should be actually in the report. In the older software they are, but in the newer software they're not. How does he know any of those things if this report didn't return anything? How does he know? This is really, really weird. You get to see them over here. All of those things are in a table. So let's go through. This is explaining. I will go through some of the limitations and how it's recording the data, because it does sort of like give us the way to understand how the hex data is laid out, and the differences between the two types of software, the older software and the newer software. But here we see this table here is like the data element sign convention. So I match it up here, the data element sign convention. So if it has a negative or a positive in front of it, it's so if it's a positive, it says going forward. If it's a negative, it says going backwards. Your delta V is longitudinally going forward or longitudinally going backwards. So it's a left to right if it's a plus, or it's a right to left if it's a minus. So that's just telling you how to read your data, essentially. So the newer software has a few more extra things. It's got yaw rate, steering import, a couple of the extra things there that they don't have on the older software. So I'm going to go through some of this stuff, definitions as well, but for now we'll just skip that. So this is showing us that this is a newer version and this is an older version. So R revision 22 and this is revision 33. So this is later version. So we can also see that this was printed on Wednesday, May the 10th, 2023. So here's the thing. The car was not dismantled and the chip off had not occurred, because this report couldn't be generated unless that car was actually functional. We heard the guy, the engineer, say that the car literally has to be able to be turned on and functional to get these reports. So the chip off happened after this date. This is nowhere near when the accident happened and they had pinned it on the girl. So interesting, right? I'm sure people have already noticed that before. Probably flogging a dead horse there, but anyway, just showing you that the paperwork supports that. All right, let me just switch back to the chat. It never happened. Where are we? Let me scroll back a bit. 1111. Good, y'all can see it. Nice. I wonder what Lexus Toyota has to say about their technology in cars. They need to make a statement. DA's office is performing. Well, I don't know that they would make a statement, to be honest, Dave, because, you know, this is, if the Commonwealth wins this, then Toyota looks bad because it was a system, it's assumed it was a system-wide failure. If the Commonwealth doesn't win it, maybe Toyota might say something, say, yeah, that system-wide failure didn't happen. I mean, obviously it's a bad look for that model of car, right? Either way. 20K in no time with coverage like this. Thank you, Libra. It's rabbit holes. I'm sure Gracie knows what I'm talking about. You just like pick up one thing and go, I'm just gonna have a quick squeeze at this. Before you know it, you're down this freaking 5-hour rabbit hole. And you've lost half the day. So, oh, we got someone to talk about the polycarbonate. I do have someone who's actually an expert, a PhD in hard plastics. It's really just like the holidays. I wanted him before Christmas, and he couldn't fit us in. So the holidays are going to come and go, and then we'll try and fit him in again. I know he wants to. He's not said, no, I don't want to come up. He does want to. So we will have some more information about that. It might be also to do with planning out demonstration material or ways to show you this. So it never happened. Sally Port. A microscopic investigation, Gitmo says, about brake lines in the polycarbonate would show how it broke inwards, outwards. That's what our plastics expert can tell us. Their data retrieval dates are evidence against the Commonwealth. I haven't done the deep dive on that yet, so I was just pointing that out for the note. Indy girl, thanks for joining us. All right, let's go back to these again, and I'll prattle on for a bit longer. All right, so on the left here is the entire freaking report on Karen's car. Right, this is everything. And I'm calling BS. Okay, so first of all, complete file recorded, yes. So in the old one, it would say recording status, all pages complete. All right. If it wasn't complete, that would be saying no, and that would be saying incomplete. All right. The freeze signal off, and the factor is none because it's off. But I'll come back to that because that's also interesting. Part of whether or not data could be overwritten is on the freeze signal based on that hardware setting, basically. Diagnostic trouble codes exist. See, is there any diagnostic trouble codes? It says no. This one says diagnostic trouble codes. It says no. So that tells me, even though this one's got a crash event, that the other chips that the other dude was talking about, the other chips didn't trigger an event, basically. There was no diagnostic events triggered. So that's interesting. Ignition cycle, download times. It says it's been downloaded 1,135 times. That's an interesting number, Gracie, if you haven't noticed that. I'm sure you did, but total number of front-end crash events, freeze signal, it doesn't have that field for event severity, time to deployment, so crash, most recent. Let's just try and find ignition cycle over here. in the older system, ignition. Okay, the ignition cycle since, so that's the same value, number of times, 0. So the old system has it under a different table called DTCs, present at start of event. Whereas over here, we're seeing that in the system status at time of retrieval. But yeah, back to, hang on, let's come back to this. Oops, I went too far. What else is on here? Time of event, not NA, time event, NA, previous crash, 0, latest pre-crash page, 0, contains unlinked pre-crash data, no. So any failures that happened with this system, they should have been here. They should have been recorded here. There should have been some unlinked pre-crash data, for example, or a latest pre-crash page. There is a ding on the back of that car that I think Defence was alluring to having happened at another time. So, and then events recorded, none, NA. That's it. That's Karen's entire data. But when you look at the older system, you get, even when it's NA, you're still getting a listing for it. So this one here, like nothing should have been listed for that because it's not commanded, not available. Well, if it's a case of that's not there and it just drops the table rather than giving us a list, wouldn't it have done that? So that seems sus to me. If the old system's doing it, why isn't the new system doing it? So it could be just a change in system, but I don't think so. We've also got system status at event. Understandably, this won't have one because there were no events, or so they would have us think. But in that event, you would think that table would still get printed off. It would be incomplete, or it would be 0. Do you get what I'm saying? Like they would be there, but not the same values if there was a crash. So did the driver have their buckle up? Yes, they did. Did the passenger? No, the passenger was unbuckled. Well, how did Trooper Paul know? If there's no more tables here, how did Trooper Paul know? How did Trooper Paul know that there was no seatbelt signs of seatbelt usage? The data should have told him that. So what's he doing? Speculating? I don't know how he knows that because the data didn't tell him anything about seatbelts. There's nothing in here about seatbelts, whether they were on or off. It ends here. That's the end of the data. What's after that is, this is the raw data. This is how it looks before it's turned into human readable format. So it doesn't matter if it's being read by the Bosch tool or if it's being read by the Toyota tool. Either way, this is what's stored in there. It's hexadecimal values, essentially, which convert into human readable format like this. So yeah, so time from the previous TRG. What's a TRG stand for? Let me come back here and see if anyone here has an idea. Okay. Yeah, I reckon he needs to come in too. Exactamundo. 5 exactly, right? Go for it. It's not obsessive, it's just, yeah, it's not. It's the rabbit hole, right? I don't know what the meaning is, to be honest. Download. So to what you and I would think a download is that saying how many times someone has copied this data or created a copy of this data. I don't think it's that. I think it's actually triggered key cycles. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. What was the context? Toyota Racing Group. No, it's not. That's not it. Back to the context. The most recent frontal event, TRG1. So, where are we? TRG count 1. So it's referring to that one event. TRG. Time of retrieval group. Easy. Time of retrieval group. I think it might be time retrieval group, actually. So it's calling it group 1 for that group. I think that's what it could be. TRG1. Time from previous group. There wasn't any previous. 5,000 or greater. Pre-crash, 800. See, this is where you actually do need to be a forensic person to tell what the hell this stuff is saying. Seat position, pulled back. Shift position, it was in drive. So how does Trooper Paul get all this other information from basically this blankness? Here's enough, it was in drive. He doesn't know what the shift position is because it's not recorded here. So this is showing you the longitudinal values plotted. And then this one is going to show you the same thing. So those values, I think it is. Hang on. Yep. Those values there are plotted on that chart. And then these values here were all not completely filled out. Oops. That's not what we were after. Pre-crash data, -5 to 0 seconds. So up to 5 seconds before that event. So brake switch, off. All the way up to the actual event, and it's on. Accelerator rate leading up to the actual event. Looks like the accelerator kind of changed a bit and then dropped off. Engine RPM stayed the same until the actual event. Pre-crash data status, valid. Why wouldn't we have a pre-crash data status of invalid over here? Seems like there's a lot of shit missing from over there that really should be there. What say you guys? Excuse me, I just swallowed something. Ugh, that went down the wrong hole. I hate it when that happens. What say you guys? Are you guys in agreement with me that something weird's going on there? That like there's something missing, right? It's some of that stuff should actually be there, but it should have like invalid or incomplete or something written next to it. Google AI says in a Toyota ECU, a TRG count is calculated value that indicates the number of times pre-crash recording trigger. Oh, trigger group. Of course. TR for trigger. Gotcha. Thank you, Jim. You filled it in. I knew it was to do with that group, though. Trigger group. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jim. So, no, Gitmo, the document on the right is another a crash altogether. It's not Karen's crash. The document on the left is Karen's crash. But we didn't even have what gear she was in. We got nothing at all. So it's not even that that's a triggering event. But knowing what, if Karen's had triggered an event, we might have got more tables. But what I'm saying is that some of these tables really still should be there, even if they're not connected to an event. Do you get what I'm saying? And then we would have it's an incomplete or it's not connected to a crash event. Do you get what I'm saying? Some of these tables, it feels like some of them should be there, whether there's a triggered event or not. Yeah, I don't know that it was a fly. It was probably actually a file. No, I swallowed it at the wrong time while I was talking. So I seem to do that a lot as I'm getting older. It's an old lady thing. It's a boomer thing. If Karen's car couldn't go 26 miles per hour in reverse, how did Trooper Paul do his tests outside the Sally port that showed he did that and that he didn't seem to damage the car? I don't see any evidence that he actually did do that. We saw him with our eyes go backwards pretty fast. But what evidence did we see that he reached 26 miles per hour? Because I don't actually remember that evidence. I could be wrong. I could just have like a flaky memory, which is highly likely. But I don't remember seeing any evidence that he himself actually did reach 26 miles per hour in reverse. I saw evidence that Aidan Carney couldn't do it without like being very, very scared. Yes, exactly. Master's criminology. I agree. Inept is probably the most likely answer there. A lot seems to be missing. So you're in agreement. What do you think, Grace? Do you think there's a lot missing? Or do you think it stands to reason, or it's at least arguable by reason that there was no triggered event, so there is no data? There's no other tables to list because there was no triggered event. So because it does seem to me that the Techstream picked up an event where the Bosch, which is reading the oh my god, I've forgotten which is which now. The Bosch, which is reading a different unit, did not pick up an event. Right, that's what I remember too. I don't think that we actually even established what speed he got up to. We watched him do it, but we didn't establish any speeds. Yeah, that's what I think too. John Marie. I distinctly remember being unimpressed. Me too. Like, there was no proof that he got into any speed, right? Someone went and looked at the numbers. Good. 1167 key cycles, and you would have less ignition cycles. So 1135s would be reasonable to see in this report. Thank you. That's what I was thinking. I thought it was going to be that too. Yes. So taken before the car has been driven another however many times, I guess. So he absolutely is American Dreamer. Abso-freaking-ly. No, turtles can't do that speed. No. Turtles freak out. What did he get up to? I think he got up to 19, didn't he? And he freaked out and went, yeah, no, that's insane. Yeah, I reckon so too, NR. I reckon we should still have the tables that just say NA or 0. All right, so here's something else that's interesting. I'm going to show you something else that's really weird with these two things. Let's go to the hexadecimal data for this report here. That's like very complete report. All right, so these are all your PIDs, but we'll just ignore that and go to the EEPROM data. So that's the EEPROM data in the old report. And then we go over here to the EEPROM data in Karen's report. Look at all these zeros. And not all of them are zeros. Some of them are different shapes to others. So some are zeros and some are O's, like an actual O. That's weird, right? So I don't know what's going on with that shit. All right? If this is true for Paul going, yeah, I don't want any values in there, then I could probably actually go through these and find out which one's are O, which one's are zero, and tell you how many values were actually changed here. But if you look over here on the old report, instead of just being zeros for no data, it's showing a dotted dash, basically, a hyphen. So each field is 2 values. But rather than having, because zeros are actually a value in hexadecimal, rather than doing this is all representing a value rather than nothing was recorded. This seems strange to me. This seems really odd to me. And then a zero, actual letter O instead of a zero in a lot of these columns. That's weird to me as well. If these are meant to be numbers, then they're going to be printed as numbers, and I'm going to confuse a zero with an O. Only a human does that. So that's weird to me as well. And then I did try to actually get some kind of human readable format out of this to see if it matches what's written in the report. But the problem with it is you can't, because you actually need the code to decipher it, basically. You need the code to decipher it, essentially. I hope I didn't just flash private messages on the screen. Essentially, yeah, you need the codes. So if you don't have the Techstream hooked up to the car, then the way the algorithm works to create those hexadecimal values is not going to decode, if that makes sense. Yeah, there is no O in hexadecimal. Exactly. So you're seeing the weird shit I'm seeing, right, guys? So maybe not those of you who aren't familiar with these values that we're looking at, but people who are seeing some weird shits. The 00 entries null data. No, the 00 entries are actually a hexadecimal value. A null data is usually, well, as you can see in the old software, it was a hyphen. In the old software, it was a hyphen. In the new software, it's either a 0 or a letter O. It can't be both. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's just really weird to me. I can't tell you if it means a null value or not. It's weird, right? Only goes up to F, correct. Exactly. Highlight, yeah, well, they're all in a column. They're actually all in a column. But I can't do that for you on the screen because it will highlight the whole row. It only gives us rows on the screen. But yes, it is indeed columns of O's instead of zeros. So just say no to hex. So I did actually ask the AI to analyze it for me and see what they could figure out. And the AI said, no, I need the keys to this vehicle to tell you what it's saying, basically. Pokey, Happy New Year to you too. You're in Central Time. 10 hours from 2025. We are officially in 2025 by 7 hours here. 0 spelled not guilty. I'll allow it. So interesting, right? That's all the stuff I found. The Lexus is talking to me. I don't know what the hell it's saying, but it's telling me stuff. It's telling me It's telling me shit ain't real here. Something's going on. I don't know what. I don't know why. But yeah, weird stuff, guys. Weird stuff. So otherwise, these are actually identical reports outside of, those things. So here's Trooper Paul's spreadsheet. All these pretty colors gave it away that it was actually a spreadsheet. So with his key cycle column, his date lapsed. Obviously, know actually when this happened. So, excuse me. And the odometer mileage. So yeah, that's his cherry-picked table. Weird stuff, guys. Weird stuff. So we can turn off the dizzy screen now. Have we had a weird fog here? No, but I've heard about your weird fog. Has anyone in the chat actually seen the weird fog with their own eyes? Patty Cake says, anyone in Take knows 0 can't be confused for O. That's lazy programming if someone did that intentionally. If no data was recorded, it should be a null. Exactly. Exactly. Bits or bytes? You want to go through bits or bytes, do you? 6F could mean key off or ABS sensor on. There's no way to know unless we know what those fields. We need the algorithm to know what those fields relate to. So even the AI couldn't work it out without that algorithm. So it's kind of like it's like encryption, basically. If you haven't got the key for your encryption, then you can't unencrypt it. It's that kind of deal. So yeah, you could just make it say it the easy way and say it's encrypted. Praying for your health. You know what would be better than praying if I just give up freaking smoking? But I did actually just choke on my own spit then. Bits or bytes, Brian. Do we want to talk about bits or bytes? Did one of the people of the state Hyde get the wrong side? Yes, they did. Indeed, they did. I did do a video on that too. That might be easier than racking my brains. Let's see where that is. Gaslighting again. Here we go. Or was it after all of that? Hang on. Sorry, guys. Let me just find the video. Go back one. It must be here. The infotainment system. Oh my god. I'm sorry I'm being quiet on you. Untold stories. Nope, that was about the glass. Uh-oh. What kind of text? I found it. Oh my god, I hid that from myself really well, didn't I? Exactly, Eddie. 8 bits to a byte. So it's kind of saying 2.5 centimeters to an inch. All right? You can't all of a sudden end up with a foot when you still only got 1 inch. Only if you're screwing up your maths, how many centimeters fit into an inch could you end up with a foot? Do you get what I'm saying? Just make everything exactly. That sorts everything out. But the null character, I don't know how PDF is going to print the null character. Doesn't it depend on like whether you do it with Adobe or whatever? Like different text systems will print the null character a different way, won't they? Let's have man Shannon teach it. I got screamed at by my first IT boss for using, and for good reason. Thank you for your hard work. I stopped smoking on Boxing Day. Well done, Eddie. Man, I wish I could. Just like bang, no more. Doesn't happen. Not easily anyway. I doubt it. I would suck as a lawyer because you know what? I just want to climb over the desk and throttle Lally. I would suck as a lawyer, like big time. You'd think it would just write null. I don't know what it would write, to be honest. Like, I know that in an SQL database, for example, like MySQL, it writes null, just with a capital N. But then actually, I haven't opened a Microsoft database for a very long time. I can't remember. I think it's null with a little n. I think. Oh, shit, I haven't done any Microsoft databases for a very long time. In Wireshark use for examining network traffic, it's printed as a period. A lot of software does it that way. It's almost universally recognized. Yeah, it's interesting. All right. But in databases, it's actually the word null. So, and if you're setting something to null in programming, like in OOP programming, then it is actually the word null. Megabit to megabytes, I think he goofed on. He absolutely did goof on. So I got that video. Oops. Did I? I think I did. Shush. I wish there wasn't so much clutter in the advertising. Let's put this up on the screen. So this is basically how I worked it out, I think. Going back 2 months ago. This is how I worked it out. Someone did actually alert me of it. And then asked for us to like fact check him. And so I did follow it up. This is my follow-up on fact checking what he thought was the case. Let's knock that off the screen. Guys, this is huge. This morning when we were talking about the telematics system, someone pointed me over to X to look at Big Old Dog's post where he was pointing out an error that I didn't think was correct. However, I went and checked the actual chip and the capacity of that chip, being the Micron JWB57, and sure enough, it is certainly a 4G chip. The reason I wasn't twigging is because the document lodged by the Commonwealth calls it a 4GB chip. Okay, notice it's capitalized, G capital B. That means gigabytes, capital B, megabytes. And another thing to note is that bits is usually, nowadays when we're talking in bits, when you see bits on the screen, it's generally talking about transfer speed. It's not generally talking about storage capacity. It's usually a speed measurement. So that's what put me off track until I was tagged in that post, and I thought, hang on, Let's go check the chip first, because there could be some sort of transfer that's going on. It might be measured by transfer speed, depending on how that chip works. So that's why I went and looked up the chip, essentially. And so they do actually give us the chip. This is a Micron JWB57, and the other one's a Micron blah, 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 blah. Right. And indeed, the big old dog also listed it as a 4GB chip. GB, however, stands for gigabytes, and the chip is listed as gigabits. That's a vast difference. As the big old dog has calculated, 4 gigabits is indeed 500 megabytes. So then I decided to look up the capacity of the other chip that is listed in the Commonwealth's notice, and lo and behold, what do I find? It is also a gigabit chip, and there's a whole list of them here, but if you look at the memory size, they are all 2GB, not byte, and that's a whole other calculation. 2 gigabits is 250 megabytes. This means the original amount of data that was pulled from these two chips is actually the capacity of the chips. In fact, the first chip, the Micron JWB57, apparently only produced 540 meg, which is 40 meg bigger than a 500 meg chip. But as I was explaining this morning, when they're factory tested, they are actually capable of a little bit more than what they're set at. During the testing process, they will keep jamming more and more into the memory until it fails. The point where it fails, that's above its capacity. So they will set the actual capacity a bit below that so the chip won't fail, and that's the size of the chip. So that's how sometimes you can get a little bit more data into the chip than it's labelled for. The other chip that they mention said, bloody mute button, just to elaborate there. The reason I know that is because gamers generally overclock their CPU. So your CPU is another type of chip, and it's put out on the market at whatever below its fail rate. They test it until it fails, and then they say, right, we have to pull that back, and that's the rate of that chip. And so you'll find gamers will overclock their chips because they are actually capable of doing a little bit more before they start failing. So the gamers will go in there and turn up the speed and turn up the speed and turn up the speed and keep measuring until they get errors. Then they'll just pull it back a little bit rather than a big lot that the manufacturer might, and they've overclocked their chip from its manufacturing specifications. So that's just something that I know you can do as a gamer. I don't even know how you're doing it on like this modern technology. That's like way over my head. I'm still back in the like 586 days with this stuff. I gave up. Things got way out of my league in as far as keeping up with the technology, but I do know that that's basically what we're talking about here. Right, it's just an analogy, essentially, how I know the chips are tested, essentially. And because I was like married to a dude who used to work for a company that produced chips, so one time. But anyway, it netted 264 megabyte, which is again a little bit more than 250 megabyte, its capacity. I have asked a couple of tech heads to look into it for me, but so far it seems to be 4 of us who are familiar with gigabytes and gigabits that are looking at the capacity, and it's definitely bits, not bytes. So what does all this mean in English? Those two chips are not going to produce any more data than they already did. What we saw through trial was a curated list of that data according to Trooper Paul's desirable information. Certainly not all the data, but rest assured there is no more data than what they've already got. If you can't even get this basic stuff right with the telematics modules, then how is he going to get it right with the infotainment module? And, quote, given that the testing is potentially destructive, unquote, I would think you'd want to have all your ducks in a row before you start the testing. Clearly, Trooper Guarino didn't have all his ducks in a row, and clearly, Mr. Burgess has no idea what he's talking about. At what point does any decent judge decide that these guys have proven themselves incompetent and then hands it over to a competent team? At which point is Bev ever reasonable about anything, really? So, there you go. Did you understand that? Did that make sense to everyone? It's the same as, you guys don't work in centimeters and meters, but let's say you screw up and you think you're measuring in millimeters, which is the smallest unit, and someone tells you, well, it's 100 millimeters, but somehow your brain can't fathom that 100 millimeters is only 10 centimeters. It's not like a full meter. And then you go and tell the judge, there's a whole meter of information here, because you can't do the math. So that's exactly what it's like, basically. But I don't know if it was easy for you to understand with millimeters, centimeters, and meters, but it's essentially the same thing. I was trying to do it in inches because I don't know your units to correctly say it. Like, you know how you've got eighths and sixteenths, and it goes on. It was easier for me to say millimeters and centimeters and a meter, but it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't be clocking on as an expert. And then to turn around and say that Dr. Russell is not competent as an expert, like, Jesus. Like, it's kind of almost like they aimed at Dr. Russell as like revenge because this was exposed. Did anyone get the feeling it was like revenge? Yeah, thank you, Brian. It's the same as saying the capacity was 1 foot, but they've screwed it up and gone, no, it's a yard, because they don't understand how many feet are in a yard. Exactly. So it's not even a case of like, I'm trying to think of an example. It's quite simply not understanding math. That's all it is. If you don't get it, it's because you don't get math. Millimeters was a good analogy. There you go. Everyone's getting the idea here. Feet and yards, same thing. It's just math. So if people are still going around saying, oh, but there's more data there, it's because they don't understand the math. And like, I've explained this like 100 times already. If you have capacity's 1 foot and someone says, no, it's a yard, it's still only 1 foot. No matter what that person says, it can still only be 1 foot. You can't invent a yard out of 1 foot. So the other thing I discovered, and it's probably time to come clean with it. Let me find this other thing for you. I know I held you up for ages while I'm trying to find stuff. I didn't actually have some of these things planned to tell you about, but let's go back here. Since we got some tech heads in the room, what do you reckon they're going to get from a CMOS chip? Oops. So the same way that I got to plug my thing in. I'm going to die. The same way that I found the chip models throughout the documents. Okay, I can pull the document up, but I don't want to have to waste everybody's time looking for it. But I did find the chip number. So you know how he said there's a third chip. Bada boom, bada bing, this third chip's going to give them multitudes more information. There's like 3 lunch boxes, and each lunchbox has got a motherboard in it, and each board's got a chip on it. So there's 3 chips, right? I think he was just not familiar with megabits. He might have made the same mistake that I did, Brian. Like, I'm pretty familiar with all of them, but I assumed it was megabytes because we were talking about storage. Whereas normally when you see megabits, we're talking about speed, like your internet speeds, megabits per second. I think it's just a common mistake that we all actually had to think twice. Wait, need to look up the chip to see what it's transferring, and it is transferring megabits. So it's obviously it's a speed factor. So how quickly from a triggered event can that unit save the data? Does that make sense? I think it might actually be a speed measurement, but at the same time, it's still only a capacity. Like it can't do any more than that. Right, the CMOS is just the firmware. So what's not going to be in the CMOS chip? There's not going to be any timestamps of Karen doing anything, or the car operating, or the infotainment system being turned on or off, or there's not going to be any GPS in there. There might be a map system in there. So because it's let me pop that up on the screen for you now that I've opened it. That one there. Because we got some tech heads in the room, and I'm a little bit behind on this sort of technology. We can work through this one together. So this is a simultaneous read-write flash memory. And it's an 8-bit. Well, was it 8 or 16? I forget which one it was. 64, 8, and 16, that all basically fall under this model number, essentially. So what I think it could have, if it's going to have anything, it might have an EEPROM, right? So the CMOS might have an EEPROM in it. Or am I talking over everyone's heads now? Do you peel off a chip and read it with a random reader? So you got to actually push, if you take a chip off the board and it's no longer got power and all the other features of the board to run it, you need to plug it into a breadboard. I actually showed these last time. Let me find you a breadboard for chip testing. Breadboard electronics. So it would look something, I guess, like this. And then it looked like this. And then you can actually, so see where the red stripe is on these? You could attach power and run those chips. But essentially that there is a chip pushed into different teeth of that breadboard. They're all chips pushed, or bits of wire shoved into the breadboard. So if you want to feed power to one, then you would go, like on that style of chip, pin 1 would have to go on a red line to get power, essentially. That's how you would power up a chip if it was not attached to a motherboard, essentially. I mean, that's just one style of breadboard. There's different styles of, I don't even know that it is even called a breadboard anymore. But what I'm actually showing you here is how far back in the technology I am. How boomer. Because there's probably a couple of yous in here that aren't quite as boomer. Probably more up to date than me. EEPROM is read only, yeah. Right, so this is why I think some of it might be an EEPROM, because it might actually store a map data. So you can go forward driving and not have a signal to the cloud to get map data. You can actually, before you go, update your map data, and then you're out forward driving, you've got your map data without having a signal, without having a internet signal. Well, yeah, that is part of the firmware. the firmware will probably do that sort of thing for you too as well. Right. I'm not feeling as old. There's a few of us old fogies in here. Cool. So this is what we learned on at uni, essentially. So, digital electronics and microprocessors, the subject was. We were given this, and we were given a couple of chips that do different things. One of them was like a 7-segment decoder. So we were given a bunch of chips and a couple of breadboards and given a choice of what we wanted to do with them, essentially. And so I did a double 7-segment decoder, and I got the first one all sorted out and connected and going. Then I thought I'll go for the extra marks, and I plugged the second one in. I got so freaking lost in the wiring. But like I said, at that point, I was dating someone who already had this shit sorted out and been through uni and everything, and was actually working in the field. So he finished it off for me. And I ended up being the only external student who passed that subject that year. So that was weird, because it's not my strong point. Me and hardware don't often get along at all. Hardware is not my strong point. I'm definitely software. Yeah, same. Me and hardware don't get along very good at all. Had I not been dating Mr. Super Tech Head at the time, I probably would not have passed that course. So, too big for an EEPROM, you reckon? Well, this is saying a 64 megabit EEPROM. Still, it's not a lot, is it? Sweet FA. So I don't even think, I think you could be right with that. But it is only the data. It's only the coordinates and the data. It's not the map itself. It's not the images and stuff. It's just the plotted points, isn't it? It's only text. Yeah, that's right. Ball grid array. Right. It's just a different type of breadboard, I think, for a BGA. Let me look it up. BGA breadboard. Is that what we'd call it? BGA breadboard. Oh, there you go. It is. So that's what. Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Well, but yeah, that's what a ball grid array one looks like. So the difference for those who aren't following us. So see these chips. See these ones have got legs, and they can stick into the breadboard holes. Whereas a ball grid array is a grid of little blobs of little blobs of solder, essentially. And then you got to match those little blobs up with a spot on the board. So that's your breadboard that these legs poke into, and that one's your ball grid array that these balls of solder match up. Just so you knew what we're talking about. An octal number system. Holy crap. So that's pretty much where I was from, that era. Yay. Boomers in the house. I think it was around the 686 era. I tried to build one from scratch. So I had been building them since 386, I think, was the first one I built from scratch, just from spare parts, other people's parts. So I went 386. I could build those 48, 586, and then around the 686 was the parallel processing came in, and they changed shit on the motherboards, and I started getting a little bit lost about how to set the pins and everything. And then I think after that, I was like, okay, I'm done, and I passed it all on to my son. Now he does the computer building and works all that shit out with the new technology. And so he just recently built himself a water-cooled machine, which is weird, right? As boomers, water and electricity, brain blown. But anyway, I just watched him build a water cool one. So there we go. Libra, I'm not a techie, so what's the difference between a motherboard and a breadboard? Well, the breadboard is the temporary thing that you're testing it on. The motherboard is the permanent green thing with, so let me show you. Whoops, let me go back to this page. So see that green board there with all the little traxies? It's got lots of, everything's all hooked up and ready to go. That's a motherboard. So it's like the mothership out on the ocean that all the little boats hang off of. If that makes sense. It's got all the tracks, they're all connected up, they're all permanent. Power comes in like one direction and everything gets lit up by it. A breadboard is a testing bed. So if I've got this gate and that gate and plug that into power and wire these up, does that all work? Stick it on under my motherboard, test it all. Yep, that all works. Now you just create that circuitry on the board. So testing and actually a PCB, basically. A motherboard's PCB. Make sense? Commodore 64, says Brian. I was just saying yesterday how the first home computer that we had was a Commodore 64, and my old man used to program it, and now he can't even find an icon on the desktop. No, he can, but he does struggle now with all this stuff. My mum put transistor boards together for work. They used to litter our dining room table. Well, that's kind of what it was like when I was at uni. My kids grew up around, yeah. Back then I was also dating someone who was into the tech as well, but he was actually working in the industry for a company. So Patty Cake says, my first computer I had as a kid was an IBM 8088 clone. Oh, shit, that's even before my time. 540k RAM, 10 GB hard drive. Oh my god, 5.25 floppy. Hang on, clear my throat again. Diddle diddle dumpling, my son John went to bed with his wang turned on. One hard... I've forgotten the rest of it. One hard on, one floppy off. No, one floppy off, one hard on. Diddle diddle dumpling, my son John. It's been a while since I said that. Obviously, since my kids were little. Do you predominantly do web development? I predominantly do none of that anymore. When I had my own business, yeah, I was predominantly doing web development. But what I'm doing now is kind of trying to retire. But I just finished designing fonts for Google for our school system here. So every state in Australia has a different school font. And up until I did this with Google, they weren't widely available to everybody for free. And so my mission when I teamed up with Google was to make sure that all parents and all children get an equal start to education. And that includes getting these fonts installed on their machines. So everyone can download my fonts straight off of Google Fonts now. I think they've actually updated them. I should check that. I think we did an update. Hang on. We did some new designy stuff. And they've been working for months on that. Google Fonts. Let's have a squizzy, see where they're up to. Where are we up to? Oh my god, that's not good. They're there, but I'm just trying to do it without like doxing myself. I think I'm still going to dox myself anyway. But we do have some new ones up here, so replace. So this is Victoria, Western Australia, Northern Territory. 3 states use the same handwriting font. And essentially, you know, these are primary school learning to write. So there's like arrows. I don't know if you could see the arrows and stuff in there. Dots and arrows to learning to write kind of thing. Let me find another one. So there's also, with the guidelines, like the ruled guides as well that we did, there's also dotted, the dotted ones for the little kids to learn with a start dot. And yeah, it's all educational stuff for kids, essentially. Big WA. So there's South Australia, New South Wales, and ACT. They're still working on them, obviously. They've only got these ones up so far. But yeah, that's basically what I was doing. I moved away from web development. I'm now doing... I didn't even know that was an avenue. Yeah, I don't think I did either. I got accidentally tripped over this myself. So what happened was, about 6 years ago, my grandson had just got into grade 1. So he's the oldest of my 3 grandchildren. So the oldest one starts grade 1, and he decides, I hate school. I hate homework. I hate doing that. I hate this. Hates everything. And, you know, the whole, like, crying for hours instead of, like, just get in and do it. The whole time you sat there and cried for that whole hour, you could have finished your homework. But anyway, I decided to make some computer games and put his homework on a computer. And that sparked him up. He wanted to do his homework, wanted to do the spelling, wanted to do the boring stuff he didn't like. But part of that was learning the spelling. He had to learn it in the state that we're living in, that handwriting. So if I showed him, like when I first wrote the program, it was just in like Arial, for example, and you know how the A's weird, like the A here on the screen that we're looking at in Brian, and also Avenue. So so he wasn't learning how to do what the teacher was teaching him to do, essentially. I thought, okay, we need that particular school font. So I went looking for it. It was going to cost me $100. I was like, get out of here. Get the hell out of town. I'm not paying $100 for it. So I went and made it. And then I thought, then his mum was like, my daughter, she's like, we're moving to Queensland. I was like, holy shit, now I've got to do it all over again. So I made it for Queensland. And in the end, I was like, well, look, I might as well throw the towel and do all of the states and chuck it up for free for everybody. So I did that. And so I had it on all of the free font sharing websites out there. It was really just part of a side project to do with the game for the kids to keep them interested in their schoolwork. But I shared it out there with everybody. So you can still actually find a lot of those fonts out there. If you just look up any state in Australia followed by school handwriting fonts, you'll see that I went everywhere. I put them everywhere I could so that everyone could have access to them. But they weren't, I didn't have any training in creating fonts. I didn't have any, I didn't have any font development experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I just know how to work vector graphics, basically, but I didn't have anything else. But anyway, dude that runs the Google fonts chased me up. He's like, hey, can I buy your fonts? And I was like, yeah, nah. I want them to be free for everyone. And it took months and months and months to negotiate, but eventually came back and said, look, I can get it free. I can make sure it's free for everyone, but we just want to include it in some of our paid stuff, that Google education stuff. But make sure that everyone still gets it for free off of the Google Fonts site. So that was the agreement that we came up with. So then I got properly trained how to do fonts the right way, and there's still a lot I don't know. I can't even say I'm like any kind of expert at it. I'd like to go on though and learn more and more and kind of perfect the craft, let's say, because there's no way I perfected it. Like, the hardest thing for me was the font spacing. Like, you wouldn't think that spacing out a font would be so difficult. Oh my God, it tore my hair out. It was the hardest thing to do. If you got a really good eye for balance as far as seeing a font on the screen, it's probably easy, but that doesn't come naturally for me, apparently. I had discovered during this project. So I would like to get better at it, let's just say that. But yeah, I accidentally fell over it. Someone found some of my vector crappy shit and went, hey, let's do that. And it's only because I knew all of the background educational standards that had to go into that font. They've got to lean so far to, they've got to have, a so far italic lean on them. They've got to be, in some states, the P's got to be above the line, other states got to be below the line. And I only know that because I went to school in so many different states, and my grandkids did as well. So I kind of already had all that background information, where someone at Google Fonts didn't have. They might have had the expertise in the font development side and the balance and the eye for the spacing, but they didn't have the understanding of why all the states are so pedantic about why all their fonts are so different from each other. So, but essentially, yeah, that was how I fell into it. Gracious Rebel says, I thought I'd brag that in 1978, when I was in engineering school at the University of Maryland, Apple donated a single personal computer to the college. 64 of us had to share it by reserving time. Wow. There you go. Those are bragging rights. In 78. See, I didn't even know computers existed in 1978. I was still like at school learning basic math. But we certainly didn't have any computers in our school. So we'll see. I might need a crapper yet. I might have to come out of retirement for a crapper. We'll see. Yes, I had to italic. So I did italic and bold at different weights of bold. So these rather than just having one bold, these you could actually move a slider and have all the variations of bold in between. So yeah, this is a one step forward in the modern development of fonts. But anyway, italic, bold, outline with arrows, dotted, and dotted with a start dot. I think it was like 5 or 6. So 5 states and 6 styles of fonts. So that's how much work I did, basically. SOS and concierge service connected to my car when my tire blew out on the freeway. Service appointments and children jumping around in a parked car 24 miles per hour in reverse and hitting something would trigger SOS. Yeah, but is it only if your SOS is enabled? This is something I wanted someone who actually has that service to tell me, is it optional, or is it just on always and you got no choice? I know it's got SOS. I know her car does actually have SOS, but is that optional? Underscore and strike through, yes. So Google's actually got their own standard. You got to have 256 characters minimum, I think it is, which includes underscore strike, all of the extra characters, all that sort of roo. You feel free to go browse the fonts, look up like New South Wales school handwriting font. Let me have a look at that. EDU Australia. Download one of them and see what all the characters are in there, basically. So on a Windows machine, you can actually open up the character map to see all the different characters. That's a standard set of Google. If you submit anything to Google, you got to have that standard set of font characters. So, it depends on the manufacturer. Yeah. So, to say that that's what would have happened, it's kind of not. It's not a fact that it would, because you would have to be opted in for it. So, personally, if I had that kind of car, I wouldn't be opting in for a lot. I'd be like, yeah, keep my shit off the cloud. I don't know what sort of person Karen is like that, but that's me. We had a conversation about this yesterday. It seems like a lot of people might actually opt out of those things. Just like, keep my shit off the internet, man. So, anyway, so the CMOS is out now. The other chip that Brennan was hoo-haing about, yeah, I don't think it's got what he thinks. I don't think it's got what he thinks it's got on it. I think it's really just a CMOS with an EEPROM, with a separate EEPROM in it, basically. That's all I think it is. That news is now out there, and guess what, guys? It wasn't the defense that dropped it. It was me. All right, we've been at this for 3 hours, and I think I'm done with my list. Check my list. Bits versus bytes, we did that. I can check that off now. Keysocket example data on the Bosch report. Yes, got that as well. Yeah, so essentially, just to wrap it all up, all the things they said they didn't have to be able to read the data, they actually did have it. They did read the data. It wasn't dependent on Burla at all, which is what they told everybody in the courtroom. And we can see that because we see the Bosch report. We also see the Techstream report that Trooper Paul made from the actual Techstream. So, yeah, I don't know what the point of telling all the lies about the Burla was. Don't know. No idea. But they didn't need the Burla. It might be they need the Burla to do the breadboard exercise, maybe. That might be what the Burla's for. But I did see that the Burla technology, I think the Burla actually works with like the Bosch plugs or something. So you can use the Burla in the actual you can use the Burla with the same ports, basically, without doing a chip off. What is your font called? Right. The set of fonts at EDU Australia. I'll type it in the chat. They'll all come up under EDU Australia. There you go. Feel free to download them and have a look at them. Like I said, the spacing is not my work. They look beautiful and neat and lovely spaced. I love it. But it wasn't me that did that. I was actually pretty bad at that side of it. We discovered very quickly. So Norfolk breadboard specialists are toast. They're toast now. Right. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for today. Kind of run out of stuff to say. Happy New Year to everyone in America who's leading into their New Year. Happy New Year to Australians who are now 8 hours into January the 1st. Woohoo! Love you guys. Thanks for joining me. Hope you got something out of today. And I plan to chop this stream up. I could have done this as a pre-recorded thing and just given it to you what I found, but what I can do now is chop this all up and make a video out of it and upload that as a video. So thank you for joining in with the information and giving me extra things to include in the final video. Love you all. Bye.